evening, everybody. I'm going to ask you to kindly silence all of your electronic devices as I prepare to call this Board of Trustees meeting for January 18th to order. Would you all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance and remove your hats? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much.
You're not alone, Kathy.
What?
I said, you're not alone.
Okay. Right. Yeah. Out of habit, right? Yeah, I moved it over there for the swearing-in ceremony. Can you call the roll, please, Catherine?
Bartholomew. Here. Edwards.
Here.
Fowler.
Yes.
Hart.
Here.
Parker.
Here.
Kwasniewski.
Here.
President Melzon.
Here.
All 7 present.
Perfect, we have a quorum. Next up on your agenda is the consent agenda. In that, you have minutes from the December 20th, 2021 meeting. You have the closed session minutes from December 20th, 21. The council bills and vendor report. Council bills, $131,112.87. And the vendor report shows $59,303.20 along with the meeting agenda. Can I get a motion to approve those?
Motion to approve those. Support.
We have a motion by Bartholomew. We have support by Edwards. Is there any discussion?
Yes, I do. I would like to pull out the regular minutes, not the special.
Okay, the regular minutes from December 20th.
Correct, yes. And the vendor bill report also, please.
Motion still good with the removal of those 2 items?
Yes.
Okay. So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Meeting minutes first, Megan?
Yes, okay. Let's turn to what would be page 4. Under new business, at the bottom, B with the wastewater treatment plant generator. I voted in favor, not against. We could just switch that. And then right under that, the middle school resource liaison. I would like the motion to reflect what was stated. Currently it says that to have President Melzon start negotiations for a 425 agreement. What was stated was literally in what was given to us in the packet.
Okay. And I'm sorry, what item was that? I didn't.
Right under it's B, 10C, that one's C.
Okay.
Yes,
Anything else?
that is it.
Okay. All in favor of those amendments?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, get those corrected. And then you said the vendor bills?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm at the check register.
What can we answer though?
Again, the Chase card services. I still never got an answer for last month, what was spent on that, and here we are again. So I'm wondering what this $837.78 is.
Okay, I do have last month's. It shows office supplies from Amazon, some uniform items, some paperwork for accounts for our payroll department, your W-2s and whatnot, and some paperwork needed to, I believe, for the treasurer's office to close out the tax year for deluxe.
Oh, the deposit slips.
Yeah, so those are the ones that you requested for last month.
Okay. And anything for this month?
I know there was some office supplies for the treasurer. She ordered some shelves and some boxes, and mostly office supplies from Amazon. I know we did bulletin boards. We broke a heater, space heater. Yay with that.
Okay, thank you.
There might have been an education item on there.
Could we, going forward, have that on here?
We can discuss that. We can discuss that.
Yeah, because then I wouldn't need to ask every month, they would just be there.
Okay, we can further discuss that.
Any other discussion? If not, I'll make a motion to approve the vendor bills as submitted.
Support.
Roll call on that, please.
President Melzon?
Yes.
Bartholomew?
Yes.
Edwards?
Yes.
Fowler?
No.
Hart?
Yes.
Parker?
No.
Poznanski?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-2.
Okay, moving on, we have our special presentation. I would like to formally welcome Mr. Katante Taylor and the Honorable Judge Jennifer Andary, who is here tonight to swear in our new officer. And I'm very grateful that you could take a little bit of time out of your evening and do us the honor. So please, would you proceed with this very momentous occasion?
Welcome. Thank you so much for your service. Thank you. If it's okay, President Malzahn, I would love to just, can you introduce yourself to everybody? I would be honored if you could just say a little bit about yourself, where you come from, and your years of training.
Certainly can. My name is Officer Mr. Katante Taylor. I worked 22, maybe 23 years in the Detroit Police Department, 10 years with the 9th Precinct, 10 or plus years with the SWAT team, a year with aviation, a year or so with firearms inventory, transitioning our department with different firearms, or swapping out old firearms with new firearms. Also still working with the SWAT team. Retired now. After 20, we can retire in 20 years, so now I'm retired and ready to move on.
That's wonderful. We welcome you. We thank you. Chief, what a wonderful selection you have made, and everyone on the board. I can't say to your credit, sir, I thank you for your years of service, and I think you're going to do our community many more years of good. So if you will, at this point in time, raise your right hand. And you say your name?
Katante Taylor.
Katante Taylor, okay. I, Katante Taylor, do solemnly swear
I, Katante Taylor, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America,
the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
and I will faithfully discharge the duties as a police officer of the Village of Romeo Police Department,
and I will faithfully discharge the duties of the Village of Romeo
Police Department
Police Department
as a fully trained
as a fully trained
and duly sworn officer
and duly sworn police officer
to the very best of my
to
ability.
the very best of my ability.
Congratulations, officer, and welcome.
Just in case you're leaving, if you wouldn't mind, if you would do us the honor of just standing up by the flag, I'd love to just grab one for,
And I need you to sign.
for our little.
Yes, I actually had my pen ready too.
Okay, take a picture first.
I didn't mind, I'm shaking your hand, I'm like, oh, there's still a little thing called COVID. I go, it's okay, right?
That's fabulous. Perfect. And if you don't mind, then, Zach, we'll just offer to,
Press the white button, right?
Oh my gosh, Jeremy. Okay, I'll go with
Years since I had to do that.
See? It hasn't changed at all.
All right. I even got you talking, Judge.
Good luck. Really good luck.
But it's on her phone, so.
thank you.
It's awesome. It's still on.
Okay. Officer Taylor's uniforms didn't apparently arrive in time. I think for the week he will be dressed in khakis, but he will officially begin his training tomorrow. So you may see him on day shift or tonight. Okay, oh, sorry. Coffee break's over. Get to work, mister. You're gonna change first, right? Yeah, okay.
Your first shift in a suit, that's.
Get those wool socks.
I mean, you can't get bread or certain groceries, so I would think that a uniform maybe.
Right. You would think that. Sin tossed, let us down.
Right. That's a good photo too, like
Swearing.
signing of the oath.
Thank you very much.
Now we're talking.
All right. Okay.
Come back anytime. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
Everybody, thank you. I'm
Thank
sorry
you.
I'm not staying.
No, we totally understand. Thank you. Go tuck those babies in.
I'm so excited.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to move on our agenda. We have public comment. Is there anybody from the audience that wishes to make a public comment? I think some of you may be here for the Church Street parking lot proposal, and certainly you would be welcome to comment after you hear the report on that if you choose. So, but if there's any other reason, or if you wish to speak now, please just come to the podium, give us your name and address. Hearing any? Going once? Going twice? Okay, let's close public comment, and we'll move on to our officer reports. I'll start with my year-end review summary. Typically January, I do a year-end review versus a normal president's report, so I apologize in advance for its length, but it has been a very busy year. 2021 certainly contained many tough challenges. The ongoing COVID pandemic, a ransomware cyber attack, and a loss of one of our municipal wells, just to name a few. Yet, in the face of those challenges, we found solutions and opportunities to problem solve and be proactive in creating growth opportunities to benefit this community. It has been the honor of a lifetime to serve you this last year, and I thank you for that privilege. As we begin 2022, I wanted to take a moment to recap a few highlights from last year. Together with Village Council, we held 2 regular meetings via Zoom, 10 in-person meetings, along with 5 special in-person meetings and 2 public hearings. We issued 2 RFPs, resulting in new 3-year contracts. Gaybridge and Company were selected as our new auditing firm, saving us about $15,000 annually. And McLean, Myjack, and Clark will continue as our general legal counsel. We updated ordinance number 559, the trustee and president's salary ordinances, and we adopted a new ordinance, number 557, allowing marijuana business licenses to be issued. We continued the sidewalk replacement program and repaired approximately 4,379 square feet of concrete in a cost share program with our homeowners. We held 2 free community shred and e-recycling days in partnership with Bruce Township. Stay tuned for the 2022 dates. We're working to get those scheduled. We purchased 2 new police vehicles at a cost of $32,195 each. We purchased 2 new snowplow trucks at a cost of $165,366. They are on schedule to be built by the manufacturer in March of 2022, and we hope to have them delivered in time for next winter. Hopefully parts will help us with that. We purchased a vacant lot on the corner of Rawls and Church Street and are in the process of constructing a new municipal parking lot in early of 2022. We negotiated and signed new 5-year contracts with all 4 of our unions: police, communications, DPW, and wastewater treatment. The village to city process remained on hold until the completion of the annexation request we submitted last year can be determined. Our application is being considered by the Macomb County Commissioners and the Office of the Great Seal of Michigan. The pause was put in place because the next step in the cityhood process requires an official boundary survey. Due to the possible change in boundaries, if approved, we would not want to incur costs to do the survey twice. In the Village Hall, we have installed new carpeting in the main office area and on the stairs. We hosted 2 summer interns. The clerk's office has received and fulfilled 16 Freedom of Information Act requests. In the cemetery Sexton Trapp facilitated 19 full burials, 20 cremains burials, had 33 foundations installed, and sold 19 plots. On the matters of finance, the Gaybridge and Company completed our fiscal year 2020-21 audit, and I am most pleased to share the excellent news of how the financial position for the Village General Fund has improved and strengthened. A few of the highlights from that report. I don't mean to steal your thunder, Joe. You'll get to the full report in a moment. At the close of the current fiscal year, Romeo's general funds reported combined balances of $5,317,885. This is an increase of over $1.2 million in comparison with the prior year. Approximately 54% of this amount, or $2,890,000, is available for spending as unassigned fund balance. Revenues mainly consist of 51%, coming from local tax and 31% coming from other governmental sources like constitutional revenue sharing and community stabilization funding from the state. 14% is made up from outside grants. 38% of all of our expenditures were made up from public safety, 31% from public works, and 28% from the general government, with the remaining 3% from other general areas. A look ahead to 2022. Much needed infrastructure improvements will be my primary goal this year, with a specific focus on local roads, parks, and sidewalks. But there are a few other projects that began last year and are still active that are worth mentioning tonight. The Board of Trustees authorized me last month to begin negotiations to hire a new Romeo police officer who would be dedicated to the Romeo Middle School as a new resource officer. Village Council has contracted with Municipal Analytics to perform a utility rate study. The data and report should be ready in the next few weeks. Adjusting rates appropriately in order to eliminate our minimum usage flat rate is the primary focus of that study. We should also be receiving the data on funding options to implement our road infrastructure improvement plan. We have the design plan and easements secured to add a much-needed lighted sidewalk along the south side of 32 Mile Road, providing a safe walking route for our middle schoolers to that campus. The goal is to have that completed before school begins this fall. Construction is slated to begin in May of 2022 and is expected to be completed before Labor Day on the pedestrian crosswalk project in our central business district. This project is paid for in part by the $190,000 grant Romeo received from SEMCOG, with the remaining balance paid for jointly by the village and the Romeo Downtown Development Authority. Please watch for future town hall meeting dates, mailers, and updates on our website for any expected traffic and road closure announcements. The Friends of the Village Park is scheduled to begin meeting soon, and will continue to develop plans to revamp our village park into a more family, ADA accessible event venue. I am actively seeking volunteers to assist with these projects, as well as filling open seats on the Planning Commission, Historic District Commission, and Zoning Board of Appeals. If you are interested in volunteering, please contact me. As always, I am here to serve you, and I continue to hold regular office hours to meet with any of the property or business owners to address your issues. If you have a concern, compliment, or complaint that you need assistance with, please call my office at 586-752-3565. I am at extension 3. That completes my report. Thank you. Clerk Trapp.
Nothing exciting but business as usual over the holidays, so I do not have an extensive report. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Let's see, Treasurer Maddox.
Happy New Year, everyone. This is my report for Treasurer for January 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2021. The Treasurer received 3,626 receipts consisting of $53,876.27 in cash, electronic funds transfer $610,406.22, checks consisting of $3,584,216.89, with walk-in residents of credit card $5,193.35. And in a few moments, you're going to hear our auditor explain all the receipts that was receipted just by myself in the Treasurer Department, not consisting of any other department. Also in our point and pay receipt, which is the credit card processing online through the website, there were 759 total credit card payments, consisting of $204,359.71, and a total revenue generated of $4,822.59. So yes, it does pay to charge the fee on that revenue. In my position, the cash receipting process is the legal activity performed by the Treasurer Department to control and to document the receipt of all payments into the village. purpose of the cash receipting procedure is to facilitate a more complete accounting control environment by entering all deposited funds into the pooled account for future investment, bills, grants, and et cetera. Now, over 2 years ago, we implemented, and that was underneath myself as the project manager, implementation of the BS&A software, which provides the preparation of accurate and up-to-date financial reports. And so I'm glad to hear that we got a good, outstanding financial report. And that concludes my report. If there are any questions, I'll take that. If not, thank you.
Trustee reports.
Yeah, we have, oh, I'm sorry. I jumped ahead of you.
Oh, so, okay.
Nothing on trustee.
Nothing on trustee. Okay, Nathan? Justin?
Just wanted to share, I did get an update from Ruth Heidebrecht with the Village Park project. We talked about the emails last week. She said she didn't get them. Apparently there was a mix-up with email. Let's read them real quick. She responded and told me, I guess back first I wanted to know where the funds were, where the funds came from, what funds were still left, if any. Originally, she said that there was a nonprofit, and then in a follow-up meeting had stated that they were forming a nonprofit, and there was an application process that could take up to 18 months. So we just asked for a lot of paperwork and information, and I also forwarded it to Christine. I forwarded this all to you. I think you got it because you said you forwarded it to Ruth because you were listed as a liaison. Ruth says, Justin, I am the contact person for this project. I don't know where you received the email that you used to send me the last message in September, but it's not my email. And it goes on to discuss her emails. Your village president is a liaison and a signer on the FOTVP bank account, which resides at our local Tri-County Bank in town. I have viewed the update you requested at our last meeting, and it covers most of the above questions. As I have stated before, this is a private business project and does not use any public funds, so no, the public would not be invited to hang out at the board meetings, although it is planned to have a multitude of public feedback in the process of designing the park. If you have any questions in the future, please please to continue to directly contact myself, Ruth. And then she followed up a couple days later, basically with the same email, just stated a little bit different, basically saying the same thing, that it's not open to the public, it's private, and there's no public funds, which still doesn't answer all the questions that I've gotten, and we'll follow up again. I just confused because I know you had stated in May that you facilitated the funds for the village to come in, and then they went directly to the MIT, I'm understanding, who has a nonprofit but is forming a nonprofit, so there's confusion there. And then how is that not public funds if you used your village resources? I think you worded it, talked to Ford about them leaving the village and what that would do to us and what they would do to help us, and earmark funds for us, send it right to the MIT, and it's, that's not public funds. So I guess we just need some more clarification on that. So I guess follow up with Ruth. I don't know if you're a liaison or what your position is with that board, but she listed you as a liaison. So if we can still communicate, I guess the three of us and whoever else needs to reach out, we can go about it that way.
Okay. Megan, trustee report?
Just a few things. Attended the Parks and Rec meeting last week. Encouraged a bit that there's some talks of some negotiations, a little give and take, and that's what negotiations take. Everybody leaves unhappy-ish, you know. And then the next thing is this last week I was able to attend a webinar grant training through, it's hosted, our host locally in Michigan is SEMCOG, but it's Grants USA. And I was able to sit through 2 days of that, get a lot of information. My hope is that can help write grants for not just our government, but we have so many nonprofits around here. If anyone's in the process of one, I would love to jump on and learn alongside. And then after that, in taking that class, I learned how important it is to then understand the managing of a grant. So I'll be taking that class this fall on how to manage the grants. So that is all for this month.
Thank you. Trustee Hart?
Yes, wanted to clarify from last month's meeting, we had a discussion as far as for a safety officer that would be at the middle school, and we would be looking at the village paying a cost of $16,000. In that discussion, it was brought up that Washington Township pays for an officer currently at the high school, and that the village in Washington Township, the south half of the village, pays a tax. So if the village were to be paying for the middle school, we would be double taxed. At the meeting, I mentioned that I didn't believe that that was correct, because I remember the Washington Township had put something in place to be able to hire sheriff deputies to cover theirs, and that was not being paid for out of the village. So I reached out to the treasurer, Mr. Nicely, over in Washington Township, and he confirmed that the funds that are paying for it is solely paid by Washington from a public safety millage that they pay. So nobody is being double taxed. The village residents and Bruce Township are not paying anything for the current officer at the high school. So I would still speak in favor for us to move forward, in covering the middle school. I know it's something that, and the other thing, it was kind of put as being a knee-jerk reaction. I would just say that was a year ago part of our goals, on our goals list, was to have an officer in place at the school. So the unfortunate incident at Oxford, although it just shows how important it is, we were looking at that a year ago. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Edwards?
No, I don't have anything.
All right.
Thank you.
Ex officio Planning Commission.
We discussed the Church Street parking and the egress in and out, so you want to talk about that when we get down to the parking lot? Or?
That would be great.
Okay.
Yep. Because we have a copy of those minutes in the packet,
Okay.
so that would be great if you could just confirm that. Okay, committee reports. I can just briefly touch on the Bruce sewer capacity request. The sewer subcommittee met yesterday. Thank you, Mr. Parker and Mr. Edwards, for coming into the office. Even though the office was closed, we still facilitated a quick little meeting. We reviewed their request and have agreed to move forward with granting their request. We just need a couple of clarification points on the exact number of capacity that they are requesting. I have two different documents and they're a little bit different, so we just want to clarify what their specific request is. And we're also going to ask our engineering firm just to account for the undeveloped land that is currently in our industrial park, and anticipate what a proposed flow would be if we were built out fully, so that we can make sure that we're holding in reserve the proper amount for growth within our village boundaries versus outside of Bruce Township. So we're gonna look on that, but the numbers still point that we should be able to facilitate their request and sell sewer capacity to our neighbors. So that's an update from that subcommittee.
And when will we see that information? Is the council?
From Humboldt and Clark, or?
Mhm.
I'm not
Well, the
sure.
information that you're basing it all off of?
Well, I met with Mark today and I asked him to start looking at the contract language and developing that. As soon as I get clarification on those two numbers, then Mark will build in those cost calculations and then we'll bring it forward then. Okay, let's move on. Unfinished business, item 9A, for our Village Hall bathroom. Just briefly, as I noted last month, you have our new action item cover sheets. And so there's just, this is obviously a carryover from last month. So the, currently, as I recapped last month, the Village Hall has no bathroom facilities for its employees or visitors. All office employees, police officers, dispatchers, individuals in lockup, and any Village Hall visitors share one unisex toilet located within the police department. On average, there are 12 employees in the office during the hours of 8:30 and 4:30. At last month's council meeting, it was recommended that a bid sheet be created to ensure that all building codes were met. trustees Parker and Fowler agreed to do that. But in advance of that, after chatting with our building inspector, Mike Bomarito, he requested that we have an architect draw out that bathroom to make sure that all ADA and building requirements were met. So I facilitated that work. You have a copy of it in your packet. It has been stamped and approved by our building inspector, Mr. Bomarito. And then also included a estimate from Vinkier Contractor, a not to exceed $10,000 to facilitate the work that you see on that drawn inspection sheet. So,
Was there any electrical upgrades here in the drawings of the engineered bathroom or plumbing?
right, you can see the signage detail. There will be some additional work. There's already a, what do you call that?
GFI.
A GFI, yeah, GFI, in the bathroom area right now. So there'll need to be one that's on the outside wall.
And the engineer didn't locate it where it's currently at? I'm just looking at, usually when they get a print from an engineer, it's pretty detailed.
Yeah, this is what Mr. Berman drew, and this is what we showed to our building inspector, who said, yep, that's exactly what I need, and it can be built as drawn, so.
This drawing.
I guess, I mean, the drawing's great. It kind of leads us back to where we left it with last month, though, where, I mean, this is even more vague, just remodel bathroom at Village Hall not to exceed 10,000. There's nothing listed. And, I mean, I know Pat, I like Pat, but again, shouldn't we have a complete list of what we're going to do?
He was given a copy of this drawing, and that's what his proposal is based on. Implementing and doing exactly what is on this drawing.
Yeah, it leaves a lot to question.
Any other contractors given this drawing also? Or
No,
just
no.
one person?
So those other, the quotes from last month, consider them null and void is that what we're saying? That it's just this one?
I did not show the two vendors from last month, although their proposal was crafted with this design and concept in mind.
Okay, but we're not
Yes.
considering those also anymore.
You can
No,
if you
it's
wish
just
to.
this
One was for, they were both about 14,000. This was a significant savings of 10,000, so I did not include those.
Well, that's where, I guess to the vagueness of it, it literally just says remodel bathroom at Village Hall, not to exceed $10,000. The other ones were at least a little more detailed, but still not enough. And then there's this $4,000 difference. It's like, well, how? I would like to see that. Did we throw out the $500 sink and get the $50 one, or like what?
Yeah, it's just
A
kind
little
of
more
like
information.
an open check, just, hey, do this, we'll write you a check, not to exceed 10 grand. I mean, the drawing's decent. I've never seen a print that doesn't have like a scale or something that lists out, you know, you're gonna use these materials, this location, there's no,
Existing?
yeah, what's getting removed, what's changing. It's vague.
It's a bathroom. We're not, there's no footings. This is a remodel. I trust Vinkier's work. I've seen his work. I think everybody in this community respects it.
No one's not
It's
talking about
questioning
it.
Pat.
We're-
It's just-
And he's $4,000
Just
less than
what
the
we're
other
looking
bids.
at. You
So
gotta
having
compare
said
apples to
that, I
apples.
would like to make a motion that we move forward with this work to be done by the contractor.
There's not even a
that
return phone number on this estimate sheet.
And that's my motion.
Yeah, and then ultimately go back to our policies, and once it gets 10 grand, and it's supposed to be a closed bid, three vendors.
And were we only supposed to
No,
use that
that's
for
over,
emergencies?
that's over 10 grand. That 10 grand or under, you don't need that.
You still need
It's just
bids,
okayed by the council.
Just not a closed bid, right?
Right. Now, if we went over 10 grand, go figure, then you would need an
I thought that 10 was for emergencies only, like a tree falling down or something.
No. So we have a
No,
motion
it's-
on the floor by Bartholomew.
It's very vague.
To.
Support.
Okay. We have a motion and support. Roll call, please.
Bartholomew?
Yes.
Edwards?
Yes.
Hart?
Yes.
Fowler?
No.
Kuzminski?
Absolutely not.
President Wilson?
Yes.
Parker?
No.
Okay, thank you for that. New business, parking lots. We are lucky enough to have Mike McDonald, represented from HRC, here tonight. He can go over the plan. He drew the concept ideas that you see in front of you for the Church Street parking lot. In your board packet, you also see two parking lot drawings from Atwell Hicks, which is for the Lafayette parking lot. They're sort of they're unrelated projects. I put them under one item because it's really sort of for discussion, but with two different purposes in mind. The first motion would be to approve the Church Street parking lot design B. Your note says A or B, and authorize HRC to move the project forward to phase 3 for construction bids. For any of the members of the audience, I did, by the way, send out letters to the residents of Rawls Street and Church Street, inviting them to come here tonight so that they could get a firsthand look at the plans and certainly their input on what we're doing, since they live in that vicinity, and I wanted you all to be aware of exactly what we're looking at. I did print those plans, and they are larger on the window that you see over here on the right side of my right side of the room. When I mentioned A or B, there was originally two concept drawings that were drafted, and we sent that to Planning Commission. They reviewed it, and they came back with a recommendation for B. Correct? Yes. And so B.
We're changing the egress.
Yes.
Correct, yeah, we adopted, that doesn't show what we.
The one that's hanging up in the window does, because I received that drawing after the packets went out. So I printed that large. If you wanted to just double check it, you can certainly do that. And the one next to it is the details for the fence. There'll be a fence that will sort of enclose that parking lot. And we are hoping certainly to utilize that design aesthetic for any future parking lots, maybe even add that to our Bailey Street parking lot, so that there was, a unity for a look in all of our municipal lots. But if you want to talk to the specifics of that, I would appreciate it.
All right, thank you for the introduction. Good evening, everybody. So, as you mentioned, we have the comments that we received from the Planning Commission, which is Concept B, which the main difference is that we are kind of maximizing the parking with this option. There are 5 spaces that currently exist on the west side of Rawls, which will remain. And currently Rawls is in a 2-way direction. We had talked about converting it one way, either the north or the south direction. We did talk the south when we were before Planning Commission there a couple weeks ago. And after discussion, it was determined that it would be best if to avoid that left-hand turn if it was in the southbound direction, so that folks didn't exit onto 32 Mile trying to go left from the southbound direction. So we changed it to northbound, which does allow us to create 3 additional spaces on the east side of Rawls to add to the 5 on the west, and then the additional spaces that we're creating in the lot. So in total, we get 14 new spaces within the new parking lot. We have an ADA space included in the 14 in that northeast corner, adjacent to where the sidewalk is there along the south side of Church Street, so that everyone can access town from that direction. And let's see some of the other highlights. As you mentioned, we have some decorative fencing along the north and the west portions of the lot to add a little bit of an aesthetic feature instead of some landscaping. And we were able to avoid any stormwater storage requirements because the site's under 1 acre. As we talked with the new regs, we'd still meet those requirements without providing that, so we can utilize the existing drainage that is in Rawls Street for that outlet. Maybe a few things, if you see the packet. The other option we did look at, we tried to create some angled parking within Rawls to maximize that, but it's just a couple of feet too narrow, would be too tight, and mobility within the roadway wouldn't be what it needs to be in order to safely travel the road. So that's why we went with this option to, again, try to maximize parking. So
Just to help him out a little bit, our conversation was basically the congestion coming out from Rawls turning on to 32. And that's kind of a hit and miss. You got to turn whenever you've got an opening. So we felt to put the
yeah, let everyone come in from the northbound direction.
Not enter from Church Street to Rawls. which then controls the traffic a lot lighter coming into Church Street. That's what we thought.
Also on Newberry.
But of course, we'll hear from you, Mr. Miller.
Pardon?
You want to be able to enter then on Newberry then, also, right?
That's correct, yep, you can turn north on Rawls from Newberry, yes.
Totally
Yeah.
north on one.
I like that.
And then we did receive a call from Elizabeth from the DDA that northbound was best for, there's a new development that's being contemplated in that area, and northbound is preferred and much better for that development as well, so that was good to hear also.
Was there any plan for lighting in that lot?
There is not at this point, I think the lighting that's in that area
Street
was,
lighting's good
yeah,
enough.
was,
You don't want to hamper the residents too much.
that's true, yeah, and then there's just limited space, usually you might put that around the perimeter, so the
And
street light.
regardless of if that becomes a one-way or not, does that parking lot design stay the same?
The parking lot design would stay the same, it would just be whether or not leave Rawls with the parking only on the west side and two-way within the roadway, and then there'd just be 3 spaces different than what it is now.
Okay.
And just to clarify, I went and watched the planning commission meeting. If we reduce it down to just one way, it sounded like at the meeting we only gained 4 spots, but what you just said, it sounded almost like 8. What, could you clarify for me?
So there's 5 existing that are on the west side, and then I did say that we would look, that we'd either get 3 or 4, and when we actually did the layout that you have here, it's 3. There's
So
a spacing separation that we need to provide from the stop sign at Church, so it needs to be 30 feet back.
Gotcha.
So we can only get 3 in there, as it turns out, so
Okay, so changing the direction only gains us 3 spaces.
that's correct.
Okay.
I did hear from 4 different residents. I have a letter of support from Sue Kane. Mr. Miller came in and saw me today. He reviewed the plans upstairs. His concern that he noted was that when he brings his RV out of his house, it's easier for him to turn if he can turn right onto Van Dyke from Newberry versus going to Church Street, because he was concerned that the congestion and traffic north and southbound on Van Dyke from Church, it's difficult to make a wide enough turn to get his RV out of there. He didn't see it. Oh, he's there. He's here tonight. I hope I'm representing our conversation correctly, but if you wanted to speak on your own behalf, please do.
I did raise that this morning when I chatted with you. After reviewing the plans, there are a couple of other things I'm concerned about. Frankly, having egress and entry to that parking lot, both on Church Street, is going to create more congestion for an area that is already congested. I personally would prefer to see some kind of a one-way in, one-way out. I'm a little disappointed in that as I walk on Rawls, south of 32, there's a parking lot that has shrubbery and so forth to create a visual barrier. That lot, which went from a Victorian home to an empty lot and now to a parking lot with an iron fence that really doesn't create a particularly significant visual barrier. The other thing is that with Rawls headed north one way, a lot of the post office parking lot comes in from Main onto Church Street. A lot of it turns south on Rawls. If you make that one way, that traffic is going to go down Church Street through the residential area, which runs right past my house.
Well, we're making the Rawls one way from off Church Street to.
Well, no, they just said northbound would be, they showed as going to the north.
Yeah, you're correct. I'm looking at all that.
So,
You're right.
okay, so that traffic that typically, and a lot of it does, turn south on Rawls is now going to straight west down past Church Street and the residences. So those are my concerns with regard to the plan.
Okay, thank you.
And, sorry, where does he live?
I live at 148 Church.
Is that the yellow house right across the street from the parking lot?
No,
No.
2 houses up.
no,
Right.
2 houses from the Historic Museum on the same side of the street.
Now, most traffic would probably be going right, though, just like they do on Newberry to the east. So it would be going towards the parking lot and going out to Main Street. It would be going east on Church. Traffic.
Oh, traffic going out from,
Primarily
on
be-
this proposal?
Just as you're mentioning how traffic patterns are, you're saying people a lot of times make a right at Newbury, now they would be going to church?
Yeah, because they would come in off Main. A lot of traffic parks on the curb on the north side of Church Street, goes into the post office, they come out, they then exit by turning south on Rawls. A lot of
Okay,
that
and they
traffic
would
is
have to,
going to come straight down Church
they
Street.
would continue down Church Street, the ones that can't make a left turn.
Now, again, the visual barrier, the lot south of 32, a lot that has businesses that border that lot on Rawls and Lafayette, has a visual barrier. The lot that you're putting on the edge of a residential area has an iron fence, which is not a significant barrier. Thank you.
So you would like to see more plantings?
Yeah.
Added into that concept?
Yeah,
Okay.
something that makes it,
I just want to make sure that I understood.
Yeah.
So
Visually
certainly we can look at that
Lots of
and see
cars.
who could maintain that.
From the vision.
Yeah. My thought is on the parking, the postal patrons who are coming that are now parking on Church Street because there really isn't any other parking. Hopefully they're parking in the new parking lot next to the post office. That would allow them to not have to go straight down Church, but they would be able to exit and then turn right to go back out to
and my
Van Dyke.
reaction is they're not gonna do that. They're gonna park on the north side of Church as they do now, because they don't have to pull in, they don't have to pull out. It's much easier.
Yeah, I'm with Gary on that. Those parallel parking in front of the church right there, those are primo spots. People wait to get those spots.
Yes.
Leave your car running, run in, come back and
For
go.
sure.
Gary's exactly right. Nobody's using that parking lot for the mail.
But right now, there isn't any other option for them to park. So without
go
them
into
being
the
able to
church.
pull onto the vacant lot, right, we don't know that it won't be utilized. And hopefully that it would be utilized for that purpose when the primo spots aren't available. Because I'm with you. I look for those primo spots myself.
Yeah, people go into the church lot, or you're right, those are tied up, and they might go into the new lot.
Right.
But it wouldn't take traffic off of it, I guess is what Gary's point is.
If I were choosing between going into the lot you're proposing and going into the church lot, which I can pull in, back out, go around, come back out, that's the way I would go. This lot is more difficult to enter and exit.
Right.
Parking is backing in and out of those parking spaces that are perpendicular is more difficult.
Unfortunately, we don't know what the situation's going to be with that church
I
parking lot
understand
and the sale. We're still, I've opened up negotiations with Pastor Newport in hopes that we could make some sort of contract, but until they find a purchaser or decide what's going to happen with that property, it's not under our jurisdiction. It would be great if we would still be able to utilize that for additional parking, and I'll continue to suggest that. Thanks for mentioning that.
Chief, do you see any? If we leave Rawls a two-way street, then we'll lose 3 parking spaces?
That's correct.
I think we might be better off doing that.
That's what I'm wondering, are you?
Because you got, Labor Day issues, Peach Festival and all that. You might be better off just letting Rawls stay a two-way street.
The other thing that we are considering, though, in the change of one way is because currently there is no sidewalk that runs along the house that's adjacent to the parking lot, and there's not an easement there as well. So changing that, we could utilize part of that road surface area to put a sidewalk so that the parking lot would be adjacent to a sidewalk, which would lead right to the village park.
For 3 parking spaces.
I think with the amount of traffic and things like that, it would outweigh what you just said.
The 3 spots, would those be north or south of Newbury?
Between Newbury and Church. So there's
The
one
3
in
spots
front
would
of
be-
that house that's to the south of the lot, and then 2 adjacent to
So
the parking
you,
lot.
you gain nothing south of Newbury for parking by making that one way?
Not with this plan, but maybe there's an opportunity to add the additional on-street parking along there as well. Because is that angled parking now? Is there bump outs there
Parallel.
adjacent to the?
Parallel parking.
It's parallel along the parkway as well?
Because I think that's the best utilized space between St. Clair and Newbury, gaining spots that way. And if we just even left the section north of Newbury to Church as a 2-way,
Correct.
so people could still pull in and out of that parking lot and head either direction to Newberry.
Yeah, that is not, I mean, it's 3 spaces different. You just leave the 5 on the west the way they are, and 2-way, and then it's just 3 spaces different, so.
I'm just wondering if we could clarify with the residents. Do you not want the parking lot or the street one-way, or are you okay with the parking lot but not the one, I'm not, either or both, what is?
If you can find somebody who'd like to build a nice house there, that would be fine. But it's a small lot. I understand that there have been at least 2 purchases by people who wanted to build houses. It's too small, okay? So we understand that it's likely to become a parking lot. But when I look out from my porch at that area, rather than seeing cars parked on the other side of an iron fence, I would like some plantings and some visual barrier.
So you're okay with the parking lot as long as it's more visually appealing?
Like I said, would I like a parking lot there? Not necessarily, but I'm a realist. I understand the logic.
And what about the street? The one-way to two-way?
I think that is going to direct traffic into the residential area down Church Street.
That's true,
Maybe
too.
they'll turn on Fremont or Prospect. I just see it as running traffic through the residential area.
Okay, thank you.
Way it is.
Okay.
Chief, do you see any issues with a one-way there?
Right now, one side, which is the east side of Rawls, right now is no parking. So what you're looking at creating is 3 more spots on that edge. And you're doing that by making it a one-way. It could cause a lot of problems. What you're gonna do is, just, this is just my opinion, you're building a parking lot for the people who work at the post office. Because right now, all the people that are parked on Wall Street are people who work at the post office. So all those people are gonna move over into that parking lot, and all those side street spots are gonna now be open. If it's not a problem now, I would leave it the way it is.
Now, did we talk with the post office? I don't know, their delivery trucks, how they come in. If we made it one way and put in those spaces, would they still be able to fit and get all their work done that they need to?
They were issued the same letter that the residents got, and
Okay.
I don't see a representative here. I mentioned it to the new postmaster, Stacy. I don't know that we really sort of came to any agreement, just that, hey, we're building this parking lot, and she asked if they could actually have a little cut through to the back of the building from the parking lot.
I'm sure she did.
That was her request.
Sure, if we could have an easement to put in a sidewalk, sure.
Was there anybody else from the audience that wanted to give some feedback or some input? Because we'd love to hear your thoughts. Elizabeth, welcome.
Hi, thanks. I'm Elizabeth Miller, Director for the Romeo DDA. I had another event and I was able to slip out so I could come and address you all. I know when this was first talked about, prior to even taking this position, I loved the idea of the one-way. I thought, other areas you see it, you see how it's effective, you see how it can possibly, create a better situation. Then, in getting in this job and talking with the developer who's working across the street and and having that conversation and ready to bring some plans to the Planning Commission, he addressed how much of a struggle that would be for the customers, because he's looking at doing a 3-story structure with residential above it. So you have residential places with parking behind there. You have the businesses, whether it be a high-end restaurant, whether it be an offshoot from a restaurant next to it as well. So how much more complicated could that one-way make it for people who are coming to town for an experience? And so one of the things at the DDA, what we're trying to do is create experiences for people when they come to the village. Do we want to have a frustrating experience, or do we want to have an experience where they're like, this town is amazing, I can't wait to come back there? So so for 3 spots, it'd be different if we got 10. That would be a much harder decision. 3, I was going to give it up for 4, but it's recommend giving it up for 4. But 3, I mean, for me, it's from the DDA's perspective, I would recommend that we keep it a 2-way, or at least not make that decision until you see the plans from this particular developer. The other thing I would say in reference to how the parking spots get used, one of my goals within this year is working with the business owners and the managers who help to control how their employees park and where they park. And when you can have a good neighborly communication and collaboration and say, look, I understand it'd be really awesome to park right there, but really we need you to park across the street over there. What incentive could you give your staff to do that? How could you encourage that? So that's some of the communication that I'm working on addressing with the business owners. And then of course, you know, hopefully opening up some other parking. My great new map is right here from the county. Just kind of shows some areas. If anybody ever had any questions about that or wants to talk about it. The other thing what I wanted to address on this agenda item is I've already gone to the Planning Commission. I've talked to my board about it, and I'd like 3 of you. You don't have to volunteer tonight, but I can only take 3, so 5 of you want it. Sorry, I only need 3. But I'd like to do a subcommittee for the parking study that that the DDA paid to do. And we need to look at where do we have the parking. We know what's private, we know what's public, we know what is county. So what are we going to do about it? And the way that we can work together as the different boards to come up with a cohesive plan to then bring back to you who make the decisions. We only do that through collaboration. So if any of you are interested, please reach out to me and we'll get that thing rolling. So thank you.
If you get a chance to look at the 2 maps that are on the doors, one, as she pointed out, is a snazzy new map for the DDA boundaries.
Yeah.
And you'll see a large white square that's in the upper left-hand corner, which would be the Church Street parking lot.
Can we be Vanna? It can be Vanna.
Please. You see the orange Post-it notes. Those are the new pedestrian crosswalk locations that are going in. And then the one in the lower right-hand corner would be the Lafayette Street parking lot. That's also included in your parking lot. That's adjacent to the current Lions Field. And then the one on the next door over, it's very difficult to tell from this, but if you get an up-close go up-close look at it, you can see the parking stripes, the parking lot designations. That's sort of blending in with the treescape that's on that map, so we're going to ask them to go back and revisit that. But if you did want to get an account for all the parking that we do have, as that study notes, take a look at that aerial view. And it'll give you an idea.
And I can send that digitally to anybody who might be interested in seeing that. We have this map now as one document. Before it was 4 separate pages and you couldn't piece them together, right? You know, but it gives a really great visual as to what's really going on downtown. And all of the businesses are very interested in us coming up with a solution. So now's the time to do it. We paid for the study, so let's get on it. So thanks.
Wait, I want to buy a vowel.
I would think for now, we see what this parking lot does, how it displaces any of our congestion, and then maybe look at this one way down the road. Really, 3 spaces I don't feel like that's enough. Let's see what we can get. Let's wait a little bit, see if this alleviates anything, and then go from there. Definitely add in some aesthetics, some shrubs, bushes, whatever. I don't know, whatever we want to do. Something low maintenance.
We did. Mm-hmm. There's some
Something
issue
would be
there.
nice.
Is there anybody else who wanted to add any input, feedback, comments? All right. Thank you all really for coming tonight. Your input, just being here is really great that you can all participate and take it back. As you see on my action item for approval, my motion was to approve the Church Street parking lot design B, which was recommended by the Planning Commission, and authorize HRC to move the project to phase 3 for construction bids. So my motion didn't include anything about the change of direction for traffic. So if we want to just stick to the motion that I have there, at least we can advance the parking lot portion.
So the traffic's going both ways, right?
Yeah,
So
right
it
now
is-
I'm
it
not
is this
recommending that we
drawing.
change
It's
that.
this drawing of the parking lot, but we're ignoring the one-way street.
We'll go with that.
The
And I-
top one is B. Is
And I
what
would
you're
make
saying?
that motion, but just add in improvement of aesthetics with shrubbery.
Yeah, because right now it would be getting sent out
This
for bid
says
with
B.
Right.
brick
And this
posts
doesn't
and
have the
and
14.
fencing. And if we're gonna look at something different,
B, right. B is, the drawing is up there, and the change is that
B is
it's here.
It's this drawing.
Yes.
So is that actually alternate plan A? There are sheets?
Does that ring a
see
bell,
where it's
Mike?
at.
And I'm confused
Mike,
on
in the
my
lower
drawings.
corner,
I'm
I'm
so
seeing
sorry.
alternative A.
Yes, that, in the packet that went out to planning commission, I think it was A.
It was A.
And in this one, we took that off because I think we had direction of where we thought it was gonna go. So we took that off, but it's.
Are we calling this now B? or what? Just
I
so-
think we're just calling it, we've got it called construction plan, is the most up-to-date one, but it would be.
But it was the 14 parking spaces.
Correct, yes, 14
So
parking
is that-
spaces.
Is that a A
We'll
or a
take
B?
the three off of the 3 spaces off of the east side, leave it two-way.
Right, but is that an A or a B? We have two drawings. One has the 14. What do we call that plan?
That would be, we'll call it A.
We'll call it A.
Yeah, that's the one that this one most resembles, the one that we revised based on the input we received from.
So it would be A that we would,
A,
we would be looking at, but with
But with traffic going both ways.
And that's the way it is on A, anyway.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay, so we're looking at A.
And are we gonna look at not doing like a fence barrier and look at doing something different?
Well, that's what Megan.
I guess it would depend on what can fit and how much space there is. If it is the fence and the shrubs can fit, yay. However, that also makes, in maintaining, I would think that'd be a little more aggravating if it's growing into the fence. So I think that will just need to be looked at.
Further
Would be the better option.
discuss that, okay.
How much room we have in the parking lot to the.
Yeah.
If it's either or, I would go with the shrubs over the fence.
Yeah, I don't know why we need a fence barrier around a small parking lot.
I don't know if it was necessarily a barrier, or if it was just to define the corner, was
think it
the
was.
original thought, just the corner of Rawls and Church Street.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
we already have the privacy fence that would stay in place, separating the parking lot, and then, of course, you have the side of
building,
the
yeah.
post office, and does
But
it
the
need to be
brick
fenced
columns,
up?
I mean, the brick
Right.
columns are nice.
My
Yeah,
other
the brick columns would be nice, add some shrubbery in between.
No,
So maybe
Fine.
instead of the fencing between the brick columns, there's some type of shrubbery.
The concern with
Yeah.
anything solid is, okay, we've all parked at the office pub, and how many times have we seen the DDA containers hit or moved?
Oh, the planters, yes.
So having a barrier that is, when you back into it, it's just a
Oops.
shrub,
Yeah.
is a little more forgiving to your vehicle and to our stuff. That's just
Okay.
a little
Yeah, I
more.
like that.
Well, we can go back from what we're hearing tonight and make that adjustment, and we can talk about that and get that modified accordingly, so.
Well, that is my motion.
Support.
Can you call a roll on that for me, please? Any other discussion?
This is just for the Church Street, correct?
This motion was just for Church Street, yes.
Okay, Poznanski,
Yes.
Edwards,
Yes.
Parker,
Oh, yes, I thought you said someone else.
Hart,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Bartholomew,
Yes.
President Mills,
Yes.
7-0.
Thank you. Okay, the second item on there is the Lafayette Street parking lot. You see two drawings from Atwell Hicks. This was a project that was presented to us from the Lions requesting that they donate the property and the village convert that into a parking lot. Mike from HRC has reviewed those drawings. There's an option for 41 spaces, or there's an option for 67 spaces. The 67 spaces would require us to vacate an alley that's adjacent to the field. It's not an alley, it's just a grassy area. As you know, we've vacated other alleys. I don't even know if we want to move this project forward, but if you're interested at all, then it needs to be negotiated with the Lions. What does that look like? What does the cost do? And again, I'm,
Let me ask you, would it be helpful if we were to, because I think we would agree to vacating the alley to have a larger parking spot, but I don't think we're at a point whether the village is gonna build something at this point, or whether a developer would take on that project, or who. And I don't think there's gonna be anything that's gonna change with this property's use. I mean, the Lions want parking even if it's continued as grass. But if it would be helpful, we could make a resolution, or that our intent, if they wanted to use it for a larger parking, that we would vacate the alley.
Elizabeth?
yes.
Well, last time I saw you, you had mentioned there were some developers that were interested in building on this side of town, and were really looking at
There
potentially
are.
this type of parking, and can you talk on that some more?
To speak to that, sure, I'd be happy to. in each one of the quadrants, as you know, there's need for parking. And as you can see from the red outline, the actual central business district, the CBD, it's actually quite small. Hopefully someday we can expand that within the next few years, look at doing those measures. We don't have the time for that now. But within there, because that parking spot, the big white sticky that's on there, is technically right outside of the DDA. So the DDA can't help fund any of that, but it's literally right across the street. And we can do all kinds of, like I keep using the word collaboration because it's what I breathe it every day. That's what I do. So when there's two developers that are working, one right across the street from where the Locks Cleaners and the former winery was, and then there's another one over by the current village parking lot. And they brought a really good point. They said, if businesses see that the village is serious about solving the parking problem, you will have some amazing things that want to come into downtown. So this opportunity is phenomenal. It's a phenomenal opportunity for the village. It benefits the DDA because you're right across the street. It's kind of like when your neighbors, and these two guys are neighbors, it's when they do something nice in their front yard, you get to benefit because you get to go out and look at it, right?
Like putting a pool in.
Well,
You can
sure,
use their pool,
yeah.
But you don't have to pay for the pool, right?
Sure,
Or maintain
sure.
the pool.
So in this case, as in regards to the downtown development, having a parking lot that is right outside the DDA will benefit us greatly. It will, of course, it's going to benefit the Lions as well. But there's a pretty decent business that's just outside of town that desperately wants to come into town, but they're like, but what are you guys going to do about parking? I can't commit until the village does something about the parking. So eventually, maybe there's a structure somewhere, eventually, but right now we need spots to park, and we need a communication plan to communicate again with the business owners and where do their employees park? How do we get people to change the way their behaviors? It's possible. And then I wanted to speak to something else too, but Bob?
Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no, you're good.
But as far as my thought, if there's something that I'm missing, because I'm thinking if in this particular case, the Lions isn't looking to sell the piece of property and it's, who knows what someone's gonna do with it. The Lions want that for parking and it's gonna be parking. So if it's made public that it's available, that the village would vacate an alleyway so that the parking could be yay big, that would be enough that someone could look at that area for developing, because I know it's a large tract of area, but if they know that that piece is available, then as they come with a proposal on what they want to do with this property, and that's based on parking, at that point, then it could be negotiated. Is it going to be a joint effort with developers? Are the developers going to take care of it? Who's going to do it? It just seemed when we met on it before, we were thinking it was far enough off of Main Street and things for us to spend that investment. I get what you're saying, that could spur on that development. But am I missing something of that, of just making it public that that's available for that purpose?
Yeah, that's a good question. One of the things that I'm working on is, how when you go into various small communities, small towns, you even think of Mackinac Island, right? Not all businesses are right on the main thoroughfare, right? The main street. So and we have businesses. We have homes that they're businesses, right? They're houses that have turned into businesses. So it's a commercial space already. It's already zoned that way. So what if some of those became retail, as opposed to just a dentist's office or something like that? Well, then where are those people going to park?
Right.
So then you have these offshoots, right, of that. Then you have the southeast quadrant. So behind there's two blocks really. There's behind Tar Financial and behind some of the other ones in there. Well, that's mainly there's still homes right there. I guess I mean more behind FAMS and behind the RGB gallery right behind there, behind ACE. That whole parking area back there is a mess. And we need to do something about it. It's going to take time. So then, if you have that parking spot where that white splotch is, right, and then that gets done and people get excited about that, then it gives us a little bit more momentum and maybe a encouragement to work on that corridor. It'll also help ease the parking restrictions when projects are underway. So let's say this parking lot goes in and we want to fix the southeast quadrant. right there by Ace and behind Urakobe and all of that. Well, that's gonna be torn up for months, right? To fix all of that, where can all those people park? Well, if you have that parking lot, it will help to ease some of those issues with that. Are there any other questions on that, my point on that?
It wasn't real rainy, they could park on the grass, but that's just me.
Would the Lions have to petition us to vacate that alley?
Would,
With the Lions? Because you need us to vacate the alley to turn it over to the Lions, correct?
Correct.
For you to make this.
Right.
big-
So,
But I think we'd be
in motion,
good with
right.
So that'd be the first step that has to happen.
Right, in motion number 2 on your agenda was to approve either the parking lot for 41 or 67 spaces. If you would entertain vacating the alley, obviously we would get the 67 spaces, and then authorize me to negotiate what that land acquisition or use contract looks like and bring back a cost analysis for village council to then consider. Because I don't have any idea what it's gonna cost to make that a parking lot. That's the engineer's
I would like to-
analysis.
To work with the Lions, vacate the alley, and then work on the development of a business coming in. And that way, we're watching what happens as opposed to spurring a parking lot, and then sooner or later, somebody comes in and wants that space. Well, we've already spent taxpayer monies to improve it, so. But
Well, that's why you secure it as a parking lot, so
Well,
it can't be
it's-
put into a development. That's
like
the
you
point
said,
of doing
It's gonna
that.
be used for parking anyway.
Yeah.
So I'd like to do that, to have you petition us or however we have to.
well, I don't know if
start
they
that
have to,
procedure.
can we offer the vacating the alley or authorize you to negotiate?
Oh, then-
And then you come back and say they wanna vacate the alley, and then that's when we would act.
My concern is I don't know that we want to vacate the alley unless we're getting a parking lot.
Right, no,
And so
right.
somehow it has to be tied into some sort of legal document, and that's what I'm
Right.
looking tonight for us to decide, do we want to vacate the alley?
It would-
And look at what a document would look like.
Right, it would be based on going with the larger parking option, we would vacate the alley, that would be my thought.
In the write-up here, I mean, there's two different options. One talks about a long-term lease, or then it says, or donation to the village in exchange for the cost. I think that's a better option for us in the long run. If that was donated to us, yeah, we agreed to let them use it during Peach Fest for that time frame. But if that became a village asset, instead of just dumping the money into someone else's property, I think that's the option we should look at going with. If they're willing to donate, I mean, at least that's what it says here.
Well, and I don't know that they are until we really sort of get to the discussion point. I mentioned that to Mark, he has the same concerns that you've just expressed, and so I don't know how it will vet out, but again, I'm willing to do that work, I just needed to know what the direction that you guys wanted to do, and if you're not interested at all, then tell me you're not interested at all, and we'll just put it on the burner, but.
Can I speak to continuity for a second? Would that be all right?
Yes,
Okay.
go ahead.
All right. One of the things that I've noticed in other downtown developments throughout the state is where they have several parking areas, they have continuity. So when you see a parking area, you know, oh, that's the village parking. Oh, that's the city's parking. So whether it be brick around it, whether it be a fence, whether it be some shrubbery. I think it'd be really smart to get the tree board involved in this. I mean, if there's gonna be, try to make sure that we're not losing complete green space. My husband and I were walking by that spot just yesterday, and I'm like, 1, 2, 3 trees are going down. How can they get replanted somewhere else? So, but if this were to become a village lot, along with this one, and then the one that's right on Bailey, thank you. Having the same, if you go, some of our Rochester, if you go to Lake Orion, exactly, you see the consistency, whether it be the metal fencing, you can still do greenery with that, and I'm sure the tree board would love to work with you on that, and I would be happy to have that continuity too. And signage, absolutely, yep, absolutely, thank you.
One thing I'll mention about vacating the alley, you don't need the Lions to request that the alley be vacated. You can do that on your own, but there's a process for that, and so I recommend you just be mindful. If you pass a resolution expressing your intent to vacate the alley, then public notice has to be given. You have to hold a hearing not less than 30 days from the date of your resolution, give people a chance to comment on it. And if there are objections, then there's a process for dealing with it in that manner. It can only be vacated by ordinance if there are objections. So you can do it without a request. I just recommend that you be mindful of the time frame and the requirements. So you may want to, depending on what your decision is with respect to the parking lot, hold off on passing a resolution to vacate the alley until you see precisely where you are and what your more specific intent might be with respect to the property. And also, if it's vacated, it goes, if it's between two parcels of property, goes half on each side to the adjacent property owners. That could be the same property owner, but it accretes to the adjoining properties on either side.
Oh, so you're saying part of it could go to those apartments there?
Yes.
And then we wouldn't be able to utilize it?
I don't know which alley, about which alley you're talking. All I'm,
But that goes up to that apartment building's property, so half of that would,
So we wouldn't be able to utilize this whole,
Can't we just keep the alley then?
you can, you
Make it
can.
part of the parking lot?
You
You don't
can.
have to vacate anything.
You can close you can close the alley. You
It's
don't.
not like people are using that alley.
Right.
No.
So we'll just keep the alley, forget all this vacating talk, and just
develop it?
pave it as part of the parking lot.
You have the control over your streets and alleyways, and so the answer is yes, you do not have to vacate it.
Yeah.
And that way we keep the whole distance rather than having the distance.
Yes.
There's no delays.
looks like it might
That
all be
makes
within the
sense.
lines.
That's- yeah, that's a great item to know, okay.
All right, so do you want a motion to have you negotiate with them? I don't think we're
Yeah.
spending any money though, and you're
No.
just gonna see what options we have.
Exactly.
I'll make that motion to the president.
To-
Negotiate.
For the plan that allows for 67 spaces?
Right,
Okay.
yes.
Yep.
And them donating the property? Is that something you're gonna?
That'll be part of my discussion, yes, whether or not we do it or not. Okay, so we had a motion by Hart, we had support by Fowler. All in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry.
To authorize President Malzahn to negotiate for the property acquisitions for 67 parking spaces.
And donation, conversation, donation.
Was it all in favor? Did we say aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, let's move on to our audit report. Thanks for your patience, Joe. We have Joe from Gaybridge and Company here tonight, representing our new auditing firm. Everybody has a copy of the audited final document. You heard a few brief highlights in my president's report, but he's going to give us a little more in-depth detail, so take it. I'm sorry, what was your last name, Joe?
Verlin.
Okay, thank you. Welcome.
Yep, glad to be here. We appreciate the opportunity to serve as the village's audit firm. And it was a pleasure working with the staff. Everybody did a wonderful job providing us with the information that we needed in order to perform the engagement. We received a set of financial statements. We worked with the county, Michigan Department of Transportation, Michigan Department of Treasury, the county, various other financial institutions to confirm and verify the numbers that were provided to us. And if you turn to page 2, you get to the most important page of the entire audit report. This is where we render our opinion on your financial statements. And we write, in our opinion, the financial statements present fairly, in all material respects, the financial position of the village as of June 30, 2021. It doesn't sound very flattering, but this is actually the highest level of an opinion that we can provide on financial statements. This is the gold standard. It means that your numbers were verifiable. It means that the village's controls are suitably designed and working effectively to make sure that you have accurate and timely financial statements. Means something to get a clean opinion on your financial statements, but always should be the village's goal to have a clean opinion on your audit report. Hopefully it doesn't make anyone upset. I don't plan on covering every page of the audit. I'm just going to go through and cover the highlights. Certainly if there's any questions along the way, don't hesitate to ask. Starting on page 5, we get to the first page of management's discussion and analysis. And I would think of this as being the Cliff Note version of the audit report. We've got about 10 pages of financial highlights. We can see some 2-year comparative information to get an idea for some of the trends that your finances are showing. And then it also has some narrative explaining reasons for significant changes in your finances during the past couple of years. So that first bullet point in the financial highlights section on page 5 shows that if we took all the assets of the village sold them all, it's a hypothetical number, sold all of your assets and paid all of your liabilities, there'd be about $7.5 million left over. It's referred to as net position. And if we continue on and we back off the non-spendable items, that includes your infrastructure, long-term liabilities, all the long-term assets and liabilities are buried and embedded into that number. When we back off the non-spendable items, when we back off the restricted amounts for major streets, local streets, things of that nature, there's actually a deficit net position of $4,082,059. Most of our local units that have a defined benefit pension and a defined benefit retiree health care plan have negative or deficit net unrestricted net position numbers. It's simply because we're taking a liability, two liabilities, almost $8 million that the village is going to be paying over the course of the next 18 to 28 years. So we're looking at very long-term liabilities that are subtracting from your total unrestricted net position. Really the key here is that your unrestricted net position is trending in the right direction. It was a deficit of about $5.7 million at June 30, 2020 compared to a deficit of about $4.1 million at June 30, 2021. So you're trending in the right direction. Same as with your total net position, it was an improvement of about $1.7 million compared to the previous year. Second bullet point down, now we're looking just at the governmental funds, primarily the general fund, your major local streets. When we look at your fund balances, they have an ending fund balance of about $5.3 million, as what was stated earlier, and that was an increase of about $1.26 million. Fund balances are on the cash basis of accounting. So we're really, when we say that there was an increase in fund balance of $1.26 million, that really means there's a strong correlation between the cash in and the cash out during the course of the year. I would think of it as being cash basis accounting. So very healthy sign. Not only did your long-term net position go up, your fund balances increased as well by $1.26 million. And then that third bullet point shows the unassigned fund balance in the village's general fund came in at $2.89 million. When we divide that number, when we take that number divided by the annual general fund expenditures and transfers out, you have about 1 year's worth of fund balance sitting in your general fund. Not too much, not too little, very healthy, provides the village with some flexibility if you've got projects that need some resources to be able to finance them. You've got some flexibility to be able to absorb those costs with that fund balance. So very healthy financial condition at June 30, 2021. Turning now to page 8, we get to the comparative assets and liabilities and the net position for the village for the past 2 years. So the first two columns show governmental activities, the middle two show business type activities, and then the last two are the aggregate across all funds for the village for the past 2 years. And I'm just going to look at the last two columns, the total government. And 2020, the very last column, 2 rows up from the bottom, we can see that your unrestricted net position was a deficit of $5.7 million compared to a deficit to the very next, to the column directly to the left of about $4.1 million. So as I mentioned, about a $1.7 million improvement. And then if we go all the way to the very top row, we can see a similar change in the village's cash and cash equivalents, up from $6.1 million at June 30, 2020 to $7.7 million at June 30, 2021. So as you would expect, with increasing net position, we can see an increase in your cash and cash equivalents as well. Turning now one more page to page 9. These are the comparative revenues and expenses for the village for the past 2 years. Again, I'm focusing on the very last two columns, which are across all funds of the village. And you can see that in June 30, 2020, 3 rows up from the bottom, the change in net position was a positive $710,000. What that means is your revenues of about $6.7 million exceeded your expenses of about $6 million June 30, 2020, leading to, in the corporate world, we would call this net income. So you had a net income or an increase in net position of $710,000. Fast forward to June 30, the 12 months ended June 30, 2021, we see a similar increase of $1.76 million. So readers will sometimes ask me, is my local unit better off at June 30, 2021 than it was at June 30, 2020? The answer is yes, by about $1.76 million. The same was true in 2020 by about $710,000. And then the very bottom column, or very bottom row, second column from the left, you see the ending net position of $7.56 million. Turning now to page 18, we get a look at the fund financial statements. And these, again, cash basis accounting. So these numbers look different than your net position because we're taking a look at your immediate resources compared to your immediate obligations. This shows revenues. I would think of revenues as being the cash in during the course of the 12 months ending June 30, 2021, compared to your expenditures being cash out during that same time frame. And the very first column, your general fund showed an increase in fund balance of $804,045. So we talked about an increase in net position across all funds on the long-term basis of accounting of $1.7 million. Your general fund had a healthy increase as well of $804,045. And then if you look at the very last column, the total governmental funds across all funds of the village, you had a $1.26 million increase in fund balance. So not only is your general fund doing well, all of the other funds get aggregated into that middle column. They are showing an increase in fund balance as well of about $458,948. And just a couple more quick pages I wanted to point out. If you turn now to page 54, we get into the required supplemental information section of the audit report. And this schedule shows the village's net pension liability for each of the past 7 years. And the dates look a little bit funny. The very first column shows December 31st, 2020, how your total net pension liability looked. That's because MERS uses a calendar year end versus the village's fiscal year end of June 30. So we've got a 6-month gap in between the actuarial valuation that feeds into your audited financial statements. But professional standards still require us to allow us to use these numbers. So at December 31st, 2020, the MERS actuarial valuation showed that they believe over the next 30, 40, 50 years, the village is going to pay about $9,980,456. You can see that about 1/3 of the way down in the total net, or the total pension liability section. And then if you go about 2/3 of the way down the schedule, you can see the total assets equal about $5,859,107. That represents the amount of funds that the village has put into the MERS trust to cover that total liability over the next 30, 40, 50 years. The difference between the pension assets and the pension liability is $4,121,349. Even with the net investment income during 2020, which the village earned 13.59% on your pension assets, which is very strong compared to the estimated amount of 7.6%. You still saw an increase in your total net pension liability. The reason for that is 4 rows down from the top, you can see that you had an increase in your total pension liability because of a change in assumptions. So the MERS Retirement Board takes a look at all of their key assumptions every few years and make sure that they are in line with the true economic reality. And they believed that the mortality tables needed to be updated. That pulled the village's total pension liability up by $344,243. Similarly, in 2019, they revised their assumption. They decreased the long-term expected rate of return from 8% down to 7.6%. That pulled the total pension liability up another $304,562. So we've got that working against the village. Eventually, those changes in assumptions are going to remain zero. They will eventually decide, you know what, we're happy with these numbers. We're not going to keep on dropping those and pulling up your total pension liability. So you can still see very strong investment performance for each of the past 2 years. Halfway down the page, you see your net investment income. 2020 was a positive $670,636 compared to a positive $671,034. The village actually earned 14% on your pension assets during 2019. So back-to-back very strong years. I'm not sure exactly what the number is going to be in 2021. I suspect it's going to be very much north of the 7.6% estimated number. So that too is going to benefit the village and will help push your funding percentage up. If you look, the planned fiduciary net position as a percentage of your total pension liability, 3 rows up from the bottom, 58.7% is where the village was at December 31st, 2020. That's up 1 point. It was 57.7% at December 31st, 2019. So that's trending in the right direction. Michigan Department of Treasury likes to see that number north of 60%. So you're very close to that benchmark. You're trending in the right direction to get to that 60%. And hopefully with a strong market yield in 2021, that coupled with no additional changing assumptions very well could get you to that 60%. We won't know for sure until May or June. Last schedule I wanted to point out is on page 56. And this is the exact same schedule, but this is for the retiree health care liability. So we had 7 years of comparative information for your pension liability. We only have 4 years for your retiree health care liability. That's because this is a newer standard. But the exact same process. The very top section shows the total OPEB liability according to the actuarial valuation that was as of June 30, 2021. The actuarial valuation for your retiree healthcare coincides with your fiscal year end. So that came in at $4.35 million compared to $721,581 of assets, about 2/3 of the way down, leading to the net OPEB liability, the difference of $3.62 million, $3.63 million. And the village is at 16.6% funded, which is approximately 16.6% better than most of our local units. Most of our local units are doing the pay-as-you-go funding. You guys are being proactive in setting aside funds to cover that. You can look about halfway down the page and see what the village's contributions have been for each of the past 4 years. So you are funding that, and you will continue to see that funding percentage increase, obviously, as your contributions continue to be made into that MERS trust. So that too is trending in the right direction, 16.6% compared to 2020, where the village was at 9.7% funding. So those are the highlights that I've got. Certainly happy to take any additional questions that the board might have.
Well, one question, when you talk about, let's say, liquidating the village and coming up with that 7 point whatever number, would that include the wastewater treatment plant?
Yeah, that includes water fund, sewer fund, every fund of the village is included in that total net position.
Okay.
The funds, but not the actual assessed value or what selling the sewer treatment plant would be, or am I wrong in that?
Well, it's on your, it's included on your books at historical cost.
Okay.
So it was capitalized some umpteen years ago, and it went on your books at cost, and it keeps on getting depreciated over time. Okay. So it's going down. In reality, it's probably increased in value, just due to how real estate market conditions.
Because it just seemed like a low number.
Sure.
When I think about
Sure.
that facility that we,
It's kind of like how trucks are right now. You usually pay for it, but right now, because of the shortage, you're paying a little bit more.
I just a question, if you can clear, on page 56 still. In 2018, the OPEB liability was $10,785,000, and then in 2019, it went down to $4 million. The main change I see is in change to benefit terms. Mm-hmm. Is that where that savings was realized?
Yes. So it wasn't because of additional contributions that the village made or any pay down of liability. What happened is Michigan Department of Treasury publishes uniform assumptions, and those uniform assumptions need to feed into the actuarial valuation. And it updated, the actuaries complied with Treasury's uniform assumptions and used updated post-Medicare health plan rates, long-term expected inflation rates on Medicare. That had a dramatic pull down and actually worked to the benefit of the village. It decreased your total OPEB liability by $4.2 million. So
Okay.
a one-time event to comply with the uniform assumptions.
Okay, and that could change. I mean, the state could come up with new things and.
Hopefully not, but
whatever,
it's possible.
But I mean, that's their control.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion or questions?
So
All right.
if that line item decreased, which benefited the village, and if we go back to 54 and we talk about the percentage total, what changed? Because you said it should be about 60. What was the change there from like 14 when we were at almost 60 or 67%, and then the last few years we've seen it below the 60?
London.
What causes that?
There are a number of moving parts and pieces that get plugged into the equation. Really, the biggest difference was if you look in 2018, the expectation back then was, in fact, 2018, it might have been, I think it was an 8% rate of return was the estimated amount that the actuary was using in terms of the investment return on the village's pension assets. In reality, the market went backwards in 2018. So instead of having an 8% rate of return, it was whatever $208,440 decrease was. It was negative 2% or so, instead of a positive 8%. So that really was a 10% unfavorable swing in the market during 2018, which had a dramatic impact on the village's funding percentage during 2018. So the expectation is every year the market's going to earn 7.6%. But we don't really know what the market conditions are going to bring.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Otherwise, I'm going to make a motion to accept the 2020-2021 audit report as presented by Gaybridge and Company.
Second.
Sorry, who supported? Zach supported. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
I do have a question though. In the background here, you have a price of $19,000, but in the bills that we approved today, there was $15,000. Is the bill not come in yet? Is there, like, where is that?
We had a progress billing in October or November for the first 4,000, and then the balance was invoiced upon completion.
Okay, so the 15 is the rest of it?
Mhm.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Thank you so very much. Appreciate your time and travel all the way here.
Glad to be here.
To visit us. And we'll take care of the other paperwork that we needed for tomorrow.
sure.
Okay.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much.
Yep.
We take a vote?
Did I say all in favor?
I don't know. Did we
Yeah,
say
I did.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there,
Do you want me to,
No.
are you in favor?
I'm in
Oh,
favor.
Okay, okay,
I
good.
just don't, I probably voted and forgot.
Okay. Moving on, new business, item C. Justin had requested that we put this on the agenda for this month, which would be to appoint a president pro tempore. In my absence, Matt Edwards has filled that role the last 2 years, I believe, and I would make a motion to reappoint him until the expiration of his term.
I'd support that.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I have, I've supported Matt for years. I'm just in disagreements with your support of the village becoming a city. I think that that's the wrong way to go as far as the village residents and the village in itself. So I'm just-
His position as
Understand, but
president
I
pro
don't
tem
have a
is.
position on that.
Well,
to
I
be
mean,
honest.
you vote in
I'm not-
favor, you vote in favor of.
I did vote in favor to keep the machine rolling, but I did not vote in favor of it or anything like that.
Well, it's coming down the pipe here, and every time it attempts to come up to vote, she needs 4 votes to pass, and you want 4. So you're in favor of that.
Not
I'm just
necessarily,
disagreeing.
Zach. Not necessarily.
I just want the village to stay the same, that's all.
Understand.
I understand. The role of the president pro tem would be to facilitate meetings in my absence.
I understand that.
So,
but
okay,
it's
okay.
the pro
Just
tem
so
is
he would be
also-
chair of the
He's
meeting.
also
Yep.
a self-checking system as far as what the people want and listening to the people. It's out there.
So I had a motion and I had support. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
2.
2? Justin opposed? Okay. All right, move it on to our elected officers, item 10D. Just a little bit of background, trustee Bob Hart spoke, we've talked about this at previous meetings, in favor of this agenda item. He would like to discuss the pros versus cons in order to consider the implementation of ordinance amendments prior to the 2022 election cycle. So what I'm seeking tonight, after discussion, is a motion to hold a public hearing at the next regular village council meeting for the purposes of receiving public comments and review an ordinance amendment as drafted by legal counsel, which would change the elected offices of village clerk and village treasurer to appointed positions.
All right. As you know, we have talked this, and it's something that has been around for a number of years. I wrote something down here. I'll just read it. We have an election coming up this year in November. Our current clerk, Catherine Trapp, and treasurer Sherry Maddox have both made it public that they do not intend to run for re-election. A majority of the general law villages.
Sorry, Bob.
Sorry,
She just responded to your.
I made no public comment in regards to my
Oh.
position on the election.
Oh, all right.
Sherry did, but not the clerk.
Sherry did not, I made no comment in regards to my position
Okay,
on the
I should
upcoming election.
have clarified that. Then I misspoke. I just
Just for
assumed.
clarification, thank you.
Then where that is, okay. So, I stand corrected. A majority of the general law villages now have appointed clerks and treasurer positions. And this is a perfect time for us to discuss what is best for our village. Current data I got from the Michigan Municipal League Out of the 207 general law villages in Michigan, 103 clerks are still elected, and 82 treasurers are elected. Unlike other elected officials, our clerk and our treasurer's job responsibilities do not include making any public policy. They are not board members and do not vote. To be elected, the clerk and treasurer candidates must live within the village and be willing to run for office. In the last 2 elections, one candidate has run unopposed for the treasurer and was elected for each of their 4-year terms. If appointed, we can draw from qualified candidates, including Romeo residents. These candidates would be chosen through a formal hiring process and then confirmed by village council. For example, our police chief, our DPW supervisor, our wastewater treatment plant supervisor all do not reside here in the village and they all do an excellent job. Currently, once elected, the clerk and treasurer work how and when they want. Generally, residents have a limited view of their actual job performance aside from personal interactions. They are insulated from shortfalls that may cause problems or additional costs internally. The pros for having them appointed, again, just to reiterate, would be a formal hiring process from qualified candidates. These positions have become increasingly complex with more regulations, reporting, and compliance. More required tasks could be done internally. So sometimes we actually have to hire out and have other things completed that I believe other municipalities are able to do in-house. It would eliminate the simultaneous learning curve of the president, clerk, and treasurer if they are all newly elected at the same time, which happened at the last election. All 3 officials were brand new to the post, which does cause a little bit of time to ramp everything up. The expectation would be that positions would be held for longer term. Our supervisors and police chief, longer terms like our supervisors and police chief, and that creates more stability in the village office. They would be accountable to the board, like our supervisor and police chief, with annual performance reviews. The only cons I could come up with would be to change to an appointed would mean more responsibility for this board. It would be a lot easier to keep the clerk and treasurer in the hands of the election process, and then it's not our responsibility. And that's kind of what I kind of thought as far as that. I really can't think why we wouldn't join the other general law villages that have gone to that process. To hire somebody, you have all the vetting, you're able to look at resumes, you're able to find job performances, where they've been, who they are. With an election, if sometimes there's no choice because there's one person that runs, or you only know a little bit about the person. So I think it shouldn't be a political position. The jobs are, the clerk keeps records, it's clear and dry, they follow the law, they keep, they take care of getting permits, those type of things. They need to be friendly and take care of the public. The treasurer takes care of the funds. And again, they do not do anything for public policy that person would influence how the village operates. It would just be if they can do a good, competent job or not. That's my thought.
Well, I want to thank you, Bob, for, you had a concern, and you're bringing it to the table, and we're going to discuss something. So I think that's a great thing. Any of us ever have concerns, we bring it up, let's talk about it. I think that's a good thing.
And if we are looking at it now would be the time. I misspoke about Catherine, but it's a lot easier if the people are not running, so you're not telling somebody, we're going to take away your position. Anybody that is incumbent obviously would be able to, have the opportunity to keep the job as an appointed job too. They would be able to submit for that.
My thought is just another step to becoming a city. We're trying to work towards that path. I understand the applicants, but there are applicants here that live in the village that would go up and campaign to get elected. And I disagree with taking that from the people, the opportunity to elect the treasurer or the clerk or the president or the trustees. I know the trustees and the president isn't on the table right now. You're just looking at the clerk, not the clerk, but just the treasurer at this point. But possibly the clerk would be the next one. But I disagree with totally taking it out of people's hands. I think the village residents have their right to vote for whomever they want to vote for, and that should stay there. That's my thought.
It's unfortunate, I don't disagree with that position, and I do. It's part of my concern as well, Zach, and anytime you make a change like that, it can be seen that way. But the process right now, one, has nothing to do with becoming a city, that many general law villages operate that way, as Bob has said. So changing those two positions to appointed is allowed under the general village law, and Mark can specifically talk to that. So again, it's got nothing to do with the village to city process. But what it does do is offer accountability. And that's, you know, when we did the wage and compensation study and the office staff was here, they stood here and they asked for some continuity, right? They asked for somebody who was accountable in their job performance so that they don't have to have this 4-year, you know, possibility that someone new is going to then need a year or two to come up to speed to do those jobs. And so what the staff requested that. Two, the residents, you know, and there have been several that have approached me and they have some concerns and they've asked me to intercede to get their problems resolved. They don't have a recourse. Aside from recall or asking the governor to remove an elected official from the position, there's no recourse that a resident has to make sure that they're being serviced the way that they want to. Where they can come here to this body, right, and hold us accountable for the performance of those day-to-day activities that are happening in the village offices. So the authority in making that change puts the onus on us, on this board, to make sure that you have properly vetted, qualified people that are doing the business of the people on a educated, performance-based platform.
And that would be the applicant's responsibility to visit those residents if they're running for that office, because the residents will vet them.
I disagree with that.
During the last election, you guys ran on a platform, which is fine. Sherry came in, she was new to the thing. Catherine came in, she was new, and you're a past trustee. Over the past couple of years, I think she's gotten the hang of it, but she's leaving us, which is, she's done with all the stressful situations, according to her. So Catherine is still working on it, and hopefully, maybe another term you might get it, maybe somebody else might take you out, don't know. It's the same for all of us. Maybe somebody might take us out. Somebody else might be sitting here in this seat, that seat, or this seat.
That is part of the political process, but this body.
That's the people's choice to make that decision. That's what I'm saying. That's the people's choice.
They, as policymakers, as people who implement changes and the way that it functions, right? That's this body's function, policy making.
Correct.
And those two positions specifically don't contribute to that. They're clerical. They're a bank teller, for lack of a better term, right?
They ran with you. I mean, she ran with you, and you guys came in together. So, as part of your administration, whatever happened from the 3 to 4 years that you've been in it's your body, it's your administration that has been responsible.
But to Bob's, go ahead.
No.
I'm just saying, leave the people alone.
To what Bob said,
do.
to what he was saying was, it's just, and that's why there's hardly any general law villages that do it this way. It's better to hire these people who have experience and all that, rather than within our 1 square mile say, who wants to be treasurer, who wants to be clerk? Okay, well, we're gonna vote.
Is that what they did to you? They asked you, did you want to be trustee?
No.
Same thing here.
My point is.
You're here and you learn. So these
It's totally
the
different.
residents can learn
It's
too.
different, Zach.
Well,
I
what's the difference?
think my concern here is that I'm not quite sure that doing this removes the politics. You're saying that we'll remove the politics, but then all that does is now the politics will be more at this table.
Yeah.
So I can see what you're trying to do, but I don't think that's actually going to solve that problem.
Well, I disagree in that the change in the way the ordinance is drafted puts the onus and the comfort, you can take the politics out of it, just like the Parks and Rec is doing by having, you know, a supermajority vote. If you're concerned on the hiring process, right? Or that was mentioned before, that somebody thought I might want a particular person put in that position, which is not the case. I just want a qualified person, whoever that may be, to take over those roles, so that, again, there's continuity, there's accountability, and there's a professional, you know, person that's hired to do that. This body can mandate what those requirements are. This body can then come back and say, hey, we want you to work 5 days a week in that office and be open to the public. Right now, you don't have the authority to put those things in place, and that's what I've heard over the last couple of years, your own frustrations with what has happened. And this gives us the opportunity to address that moving forward, not just for this necessarily upcoming election in 2022, but for all future elections, so that no one else sort of has to fight this fight.
So you could stagger those working hours of the staff. Marion staggered them. Cindy used to have Mondays off and work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. That could be done. So I just heard you saying.
We're talking about the clerk and treasurer, though. They work as they want.
I mean, it can be done.
In that regard, right?
That was just some of our.
Well, the president
concerns,
does
was 5 days
policy,
in the
these
office.
other ones don't. That's why I'm making reference with the police chief and our supervisors. That's the same way that this board has a police chief, has a DPW supervisor, and a wastewater treatment. We hire those people. They have to be accountable. If they aren't doing a good job, then this board has the control. It's not political. They don't come and go with administrations. And I beg to differ, you know, whether whoever politically was running with the clerk, that is not Christine's clerk. The clerk ran on her own and got voted on her own, and Christine's on her own. And I've sat here when you asked the clerk to resign because she's not doing a good job. But there's nothing you can do. She can, it doesn't matter what her performance is or whatever. It doesn't matter how unsatisfied you or anybody else is. They're there for 4 years unless the governor or people get up a recall.
It's the same for anyone on this board and the president.
But we could also
Right, but we
not
make
jump this
policy.
far.
The clerk and treasurer make no policy. They just have to do a good job. And Tim, can I ask you a question? You work with other municipalities. In other municipalities, are there more things that are done in-house because of skill sets that maybe we're not having done here? Are we hiring you or other people to do other things? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you see things in other municipalities?
The problem is we keep comparing ourselves to other people.
So,
Well, that's what we do all the time.
That's the problem.
so yeah. So I've been doing this for,
Pardon me?
I've been doing this for 20 years, right? I probably
Gotta know
worked
kids.
in over 15 communities. A lot of communities have appointed officers, right? But I've been in both. I can tell you I've been in Mayville. Mayville had elected clerk and elected treasurer. Still, the most of the work was done by appointed staff, right? Just because of salaries. And I think when you did your survey, you found that they weren't making that much, right? They're comparatively to other communities, and you don't have a village manager here, right? So that brings other requirements. So yeah, so do I fulfill some of the clerk's duties? Correct, because trying to get somebody within 1 square mile that has a CPA and can do your financial reporting, you're never going to get that, right? Why would I go make $40,000 a year when you could be me, right, and being an appointed official and make $150? Why would you do that unless you love serving your community? It doesn't make financial sense. Nobody's running for office in Romeo to get rich, right? It just doesn't make sense. You would go downriver, you would work in Sterling Heights, you would go someplace else, right? So, yeah, so when you have a smaller village and you have elected officers, they're doing it because they want to serve, and they don't necessarily have the skill set, right? So you bring in people like me to assist them, right? I assist the treasurer with the tax roll. I assist the clerk with bank reconciliations, doing your budget, doing your monthly reports. And they do their other functions, right? The treasurer takes money, does the bank deposits. I don't do anything, but the higher functions I assist with. And so that's what you kind of have now, like a hybrid, right? The higher things that require somebody with a degree in accounting, you hire me to assist with. And that's what I do. So that's kind of what you get. If you go to an appointed, you would probably increase the salaries again to attract somebody that has more qualifications, right? And then when they applied, you would be stacking those resumes against who's the most qualified, right? Like I can tell you, like, I'm one of the candidates for Beverly Hills right now, right? Village manager for Beverly Hills. What are they doing? The recruiter's on the phone with the MML comparing me to 14 other candidates on how I write. Where's your 20 years of experience in being a manager? Where's your budgeting experience? They're going through all those. An elected official doesn't have that, right? They're not telling the clerk, where's your 20 years doing bookkeeping for Mayville, Sterling Heights? It's not realistic. So I think that's the difference.
Right.
When you go from elected to appointed, you'll get more qualified candidates. You'll also pay more for those skills, and that's what I think.
Thank you, Jim.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of touched on a little bit the salary. I mean, you're saying basically we're probably not going to get anyone qualified to come in at 40.
No.
In your experience, what would you think that number would take to get, as you're calling, a qualified clerk that can do that full job?
Right. So
I think you said 150.
Right.
You referenced earlier.
Right. So, like the village manager, Beverly Hills. Beverly Hills is the largest village in the state of Michigan. Their starting salary is $130,000.
130.
I make 122 at E-course.
From our cost study, though, the clerk and the treasurer both combined with the other services that were being helped were about 60,000.
Correct.
So that's what we would be looking at.
So when I ran at
That the
Imlay
person would be
City-
able to do it themselves for that 60,000.
Correct.
And make a net
Correct.
even change with us. It wouldn't be costing us more.
But when I am in Imlay City, relatively the same size, 3,000 people, population. They pay 55 to 60,000. Their manager makes about 70 to 80,000. I think they just bumped it up a little bit when they went out because they couldn't find qualified candidates.
Yeah.
In E-course, I can't find qualified candidates.
And I can't remember, I think Imlay was split. I think Imlay.
They have both. They have a clerk treasurer
They
that
have-
does both.
I think the treasurer was.
I had that
appointed.
job.
Okay. that's right.
I've been everywhere, right?
The clerk is elected and the treasurer.
No, they're both appointed by
both
the city
appointed,
council,
okay.
so
'Cause
I
there's
had
some-
that job.
There's some that are split.
Correct. So you could have a clerk treasurer combo, right? You could have one person that did both. Like I have both. I have the clerk certificate and the treasurer experience certificate because I worked for Imlay City, and that job is required to have both. So there are clerk treasurers in the state, and that's how a lot of cities save money is because one person with benefits. So you can go to a whole different alternative with appointed officials. But you do the survey, and like I said, people in Romeo are not running to get rich, right? But if you appointed it, if you made it an appointed position, they're coming here for the money, right? I don't drive to E-course, because of that. I'm driving because they pay me to be there, right? So that's the difference, I think.
And I just want to point out that, when we're talking about this, my position is not that the current clerk or the current treasurer are doing a bad job, right? I'm looking at this right, we know that there's problems. We have seen problems with the former treasurer running unopposed. There wasn't a choice that the voters could make because there was only one person who stepped forward to fill that position. So every election cycle is sort of like a gamble, a roll of the dice. Who's going to apply to do it? Do they have the skill set to perform those functions for the salary that we pay them? Again, if you take that and you bring that responsibility here to the board, we can ensure continuity, accountability, and a service performance that our residents expect. Right? They want to come in there when they want to come in there and have their needs met. And then if they're unhappy, then they come before this board, or they call Justin, or they call me, or they call Megan and say, hey, I don't like this. You're going to fix this, right? That's our jobs.
We're representatives. This board,
Yeah, absolutely.
we're elected as representatives.
Yes, and as
The
we were elected, I
treasurer
don't
and the
think we were
clerk are
elected
not
to
representatives.
take their power away from them.
No.
No, and that's essentially what you're asking us to do, is say, take that power, their right away from them.
We trust
don't
them
see
to
how
elect
that's
us,
the right
but
thing
we
to
don't
do.
trust them to elect.
But we do policy.
That's the difference, right?
We're representing those people. The treasurer and the clerk don't represent the residents. They do a job for the residents. There is a distinction. Now, in Washington Township and Bruce Township, those positions sit on the board and they make policy. They absolutely need to be elected because the people, they are representatives. The clerk and treasurer in a general law village, they don't represent the things. They do a job.
Another option, Bob, is you've mentioned before that, correct me if I'm wrong, it's the being saddled is your word, being saddled with that candidate for 4 years and not being able to do anything about it. We could also make that 2 years. The general law speaks of 2 years. At some point, somewhere, a council turned it into a 4-year term. We could always go back to a 2-year term.
For the clerk and treasurer?
Yes, either or.
Then the learning curve.
We could stagger it so that it's not like a clean sweep like you're saying. We
But,
could
but
stagger it.
then they've got the learning curve. They just start to know the job in 2 years. And now they're up for real. 2 years isn't enough. It takes a year, if they're brand new, it takes a year to know it, and it takes 2 years to know it real well. They really start hitting the ground after 2
Then
years.
the people have the choice to reelect them or not. So then you'll know whether or not they need to stay or go.
But then I would say that the residents don't know what kind of a job the people are doing internally. They're sheltered
we
from
need to
that.
be more
They know they
transparent.
like the person.
Then we need to
They
get
know
that
when they come in and
information
get a
out there.
payment, that the person's nice to them. They know their name. They know all of the surface things, but they really don't know what their responsibilities are and how they're doing the job. It's not like they're their employer. They don't see that side of things. For us, they see how we vote. They don't like the way I vote. That's what's going to cheese them off.
Oh, they would see it, because just like we had an audit that was fabulous, if that came back not so fabulous, they would see that. That's what they paid for. That's the person, the people in charge of that. They would see that plainly. I think you underestimate our people and what they know.
Yep.
Another thing I just wanted to point out is that, should we move forward with this, that, and Mark, maybe you could speak to it, I'm reading the law language here, that there is an option that, should we move forward, that it takes, that the people do have a time frame of some sort to petition and get not less than 10% of the registered electors, and then they could stop that.
Right.
Am I understanding that right?
If you adopt an ordinance to have the positions appointed, which the statute permits, and it's contained in this action item, first of all, it requires 2/3 vote of the council.
Which is 4.2 people. So it
Well,
takes more than 4 to do this.
Right, it require at least
I did the
5
math.
votes. It takes 5 votes. And then, if there are 5 votes in favor of it, there's a right of referendum. A person or somebody has the right to circulate a petition asking that the ordinance itself, making the positions appointive, be subject to a vote, and if the people support it, then it becomes the ordinance, it becomes the law of the village, if you will. If the referendum turns it down, then you still have the elected positions of clerk and treasurer. So yes, there is a right of referendum, it's stated in the statute.
And if that went to election and say it goes either way, is that forever written in stone now? Or could it be put up at another election? How does that, what goes from there?
You would have to have another ordinance to change what was done.
And then they would still have that right of referendum again?
Correct.
Okay, got it.
You just restart the whole
Gotcha,
process.
okay.
So you can change it and change it back. But yes, it's going to take a super majority of this board. And I just think it's absolutely the right thing to do, running a business and how this goes. So, how that goes, it's going to take more than, 4 of us. It's going to take 5 people.
I kind of like what Megan was saying, maybe not about doing it every 2 years, but if we did do this next time around, did some of the positions as a 2-year, and then the following turn them into a 4-year, so that we weren't turning the office over completely every 4 years. So then it would be staggered, just like trustees are staggered every 2, 3 and 3. Where if president was 1 year, and then 2 years later was the clerk and treasurer, or vice versa, maybe it's the clerk and president, or whatever. You could stagger the terms, and then you do always have someone that's been in there for 2 years that has that experience. If that office turns over again, you have that.
No, that would help.
But they wouldn't have experience doing the other person's job.
Right. Well, and it's
I would
it's
hope
also
that our
hard to get
president
the
is pretty
experience.
knowledgeable on the workings of our entire office. I mean, we said you're the CEO, you run the village, you oversee everyone, and that's, part of what you got your raise for. So I would hope that whatever president we have in place understands the workings of that office
When they
and can
come
step
in,
in
they have
to
to
any
learn.
position.
Yeah, but we
If
can't-
Catherine was sick
There's a learning curve.
or whatever, I would hope that someone in that office could step into any position and fill in the time being.
There's always a learning curve, a new president.
Yeah, and then it's gonna happen too. I mean, even if we appoint that position, and in 4 years, well, this person ain't working out, they gotta go. That next person's gonna come in, and same thing, it's gonna be a year till they get comfortable with how we do things, how we operate. It's
they
the
could
same
be-
thing with any.
It's
Or they
also
could
one
be
of the
here 10
things,
years,
like,
they could
in
be
the general
long-term
world,
like our
You
supervisors.
don't get experience till you get your foot in the door. I mean, I've tried to go to clerk school to learn what it is to be a clerk and how to do the clerk's job, and I can't get my foot in the door because I'm not a clerk yet. Does that make
Yeah.
any sense to anybody?
Yeah.
So I can't learn the job till I get in the door.
That's crazy.
I'm not sure that's our problem, as much as it is those teaching these jobs' problem. That they need to let anyone who wants to come learn how to be a clerk take a class. So it's one of those things where you're not, at some point, you're gonna have to let new people in the door to learn it, just like we always have.
Or we can appoint them and hire the ones who have the best qualifications.
Yeah, and those are the people who's already had experience. At some point, you have to let you've talked about being antiquated, you have to let the fresh blood in there and have a chance.
Try that.
No, I don't think we should expect our village president to be training people that they get elected for certain
No,
jobs.
our
They should know
president
how to do
shouldn't.
that.
We should be sending them to get educated from the
Well, that's what
professionals.
Justin said, the president should be able to oversee and train these people, and, no, they should know what they're doing when they come in. And you don't get that when you.
And I just told
when
you, you can't.
elect.
You cannot go to clerk school without being a clerk.
That's why we're one of the
I
few
mean,
states that have-
Nate, she did make it very clear when the raise came about that she was CEO and we would expect her to take this pay when she oversees everyone. So I would hope the person that's saying that she oversees everything, acting as the CEO, administrator, would understand these roles, regardless of who that person is. If that's the stance that they're taking, I don't know why we wouldn't expect them to.
Well, what's the point though now? So there's an election coming up in November, and what's gonna happen in November? That's
Who
that's
knows?
the question.
People will vote.
No, I know. Who's gonna, Christine, if she wanted to run again, she could run on a post, she could be 5 people, who knows what's gonna happen. If it's a new person, it's a whole new person.
And that's how it's been for almost 200 years now?
Yeah, yeah. And
Still here.
yeah, so I'm not talking about the policymakers, I'm talking about those 2 jobs, and I see them more as being like our supervisors in chief. We get the best qualified people we can do, and they're accountable to the board. I just see it that clearly, but.
See, and I think we're saying the same thing, just on different sides of the coin. You see the positive in gaining more control, and I see us taking that control as the negative. I mean, we're saying the same thing. It will give this board control, and I don't see that as the positive, because who I have to take that control from is not what we're supposed to be doing.
And not to speak for the voters, but I would say just typical, and maybe I'm off, but the people that vote, they vote like I would vote. I know the person, I like them or I don't like them, and I make a choice between 2 or 3 candidates. I might look at a piece of campaign literature, and I see that their kids went to Romeo and they did this and they do this and they've worked at a bank or they've done this type of thing. They were a deputy clerk someplace, so I see that kind of information. Maybe just name recognition. There was one council member, Rinky, he used to laugh because he said, people think I'm related to the Rinkies, And he gets elected. He told me that personally, so I've seen that. So they don't, now some might look at things and they might really vet people, but most people don't do it. And then that's only the ones that vote. The ones that vote are the ones. So I believe that's absolutely right for when we're representing them. But when it's a person that is doing a job, and if they have a better skill set and we can get the best people for
Mark,
what
can
we
I
can
ask-
afford, that is best for the village. And I can't say it any other way, and just let it go where it is.
So, we understand you want the board to have more control over those positions, so we can monitor, supervise, and this and that. So you're basing that on who's elected to this board. And once again, it's back to the residents to elect us. How many people ran for trustee when you ran the last time?
Oh, I don't think I ran. I was unopposed.
Unopposed. So now the residents then had no other option.
Right.
But to elect you. So now they're just taking the person, like you're saying, ran unopposed. They're hoping that you're gonna step in and do the right thing. So
No, right, but
what's the difference then?
Like,
What makes your position any different?
Our power here is make sure Al is doing a good job with the wastewater treatment plant. His plant is running and operating. We're not coming to us as a board saying there's really a problem. There's all kinds of things are going down, this is what's happening, and it's a problem. That's when it would come to the board, and then that's where we would have the power to do that. It's a hired position. The police chief, there's an issue with that. He's appointed every year. We give him an affirm. I'm not out sitting there looking to, it's not political, and as long as he's doing a great job and it's not a liability and a problem, that's what I'm elected to make sure for. That's what our job would be. The same thing with town, as long as everything's running right and we're not hearing problems and things that have to be addressed. If it comes to us, there's a problem.
So wouldn't that be the same then if, as an elected, and I'm pointing to you just because you're sitting there, Catherine, if problems were arose and brought to our attention, what's the difference if it's appointed or elected? It's still being brought to our attention, and we should take action.
You can't
right?
take
You can't do nothing about it.
Correct
There's
me
no
if I'm
action.
wrong. I mean, we can't
No action.
we can't take Catherine, and I'm just using you because you're sitting there, the clerk, out of that position per se, but we can, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, as an emergency or certain situations, appoint someone at that point to fulfill the duties of the clerk in a temporary capacity.
No, you
You can't do that?
You can't. As Mrs. Malzahn said, the two primary ways are for the governor to discharge the office holder. And keep in mind, just generally speaking, you're asking an elected official, the governor, to terminate or discharge another elected official.
Yeah.
So the conduct would have to be pretty egregious, or recall. The only way you can really control, if you will, and I don't like to use that word, but I'd rather use the word influence, the clerk and treasurer's position, or your own, or the president's, is through your budget-making process. You want to influence somebody's behavior, take their money away, or give them more money. I mean, that's your primary.
I guess my understanding, Mark, was, we couldn't remove clerk from the position. We can't remove her.
You cannot.
Or I'm saying her again, the position, that position would still be there, still be getting paid, but if we had to put someone else in place because that person wasn't doing the job, we can do that.
The president has certain abilities in that regard, but
Yes.
the council does not. And it's not a removal.
Yeah, it's not a removal.
Right,
But if
because
there was a position.
statutorily, those duties would be to the office holder, which would be elected. And so there are certain duties that I am not authorized to perform, nor are you. Only that person would be, and you don't have the authority to change that.
And they can work how and when they want, and they can choose to do what they want. Not that, I'm just saying, that's.
So do you feel there's been issues currently, historically, that would bring this about?
No, I'm not looking that we would have been in a position where we would have had to remove anybody. What I'm saying is I think that we could get people that are hired, you hire them, you can get people that you want in those positions to the best and have a little bit more control of a good outcome than like we said, you have whoever ran. And the treasurer before, it's known that when the new treasurer and things came in, there were a lot of problems. So nobody really knew all of the issues that were going on, but there were a lot of problems.
Mark, can I ask a question? It's a bit of an obtuse question, so, okay, we go for election, Sherry isn't running again. Nobody steps up for that position. We come to election, there's not even a name to put on the ticket. What transpires?
The general law village has provisions whereby the council can fill positions that are vacated. So it would be up to the council then to fill that position for the remainder of the term or until a special election. There's a particular specific provision. I apologize, I have the statute in front of me, but the provision, it would take me a moment. But in any event, the council would appoint somebody to fill that office.
Is there a second part, or?
I mean, it's a possibility.
Yes, it's a possibility if there's a vacancy in office.
What the change really does is just turn the culture, turn the function of government into more of a service-orientated position versus one of political will. The underlying currents that run with political elections is what's problematic in the workplace environment, what's problematic in, the lack of control over who does that, who does those functions. Again, I go back to the office hours that you want the office open 5 days a week. That's how you control that, right? You control your auditing notes, right? Yeah, there are problems that we have seen. If you review the audit a little bit deeper, you will see the audit notes that are in there. So it's not a perfect audit, but the village is in very good financial position. But again, you have the authority to make sure that the village is positioned as effectively to service the residents and the staff to make sure that they're competent and being done moving forward.
With the exception of the electeds, by not having the office open the 5 days a week, so are you saying that without the three of you in the office, that office can't run? That we can't have the office open with the staff that we have hired to be there?
What I'm saying to you is that the former administration made a 32-hour work week considered full-time.
I'm not gonna argue with that, but I mean, there's still the
32
options that
hour
it was staggered. We had it open 5 days a week.
Yep.
So, still my question, without the three of you in there, you're saying that we have no control over when the electeds can be in the office. You're saying that our staff is not capable of running that office?
I didn't say that they aren't capable.
So then there should still be no issue with having the office
I
open.
think the office runs.
Right.
Well, even then, couldn't
I
you
mean,
just?
it runs.
So
office staff
having the fifth
is
day,
elected,
that shouldn't
you
be an
could
argument.
remove the
then.
office
I'm not
staff
even
that
100%
refuses to
opposed to
do
it not
that
being open 5
and bring
days.
in staff that
Well,
way.
Maybe the
with
front-
32,
There
with
are
5 days.
There is an option, yep.
The hours.
You're not incorrect in that.
That person doesn't have to work Monday, that person can work
Monday's on.
Fridays, right? It's a staggered option to have.
I think they work.
I'm just
better with all
saying,
their
I just don't
together.
think it's an argument to bring up about the 5 days, because that's almost a moot point.
But then each
And
day
I'm
is
not even
reduced to
100% at
people.
this point against only working 4 days. Maybe, I don't like maybe not being open on a Friday opposed to a Monday.
Especially when their water bill's due. I can't tell you how many people
Yeah,
that
I
don't
mean-
wanna pay their water bill
But
on
if you're
Friday,
gonna move,
and
if
it's
you're
not
gonna move
open.
people, you're taking 20% of the staff.
'Cause
to
I've
cover
had to
another
charge
day.
it a couple
So
times, and then
each
that
day, you're
charge
gonna
is
have
like-
20% less.
They work better when they're all together.
It may be okay, but that's.
Because if
what-
somebody comes
Again,
in
I'm just
and
saying,
asks a
it's really
question-
not an argument to bring up about this point about having control and being able to have the office open 5 days.
This is a
That really
large-
doesn't matter if,
It's just one item that I bring up because
Yeah.
it was mentioned numerous times as potentially problematic and something that you wanted to change. And so
I would be in favor of
Right.
having the office open on Fridays opposed to Mondays. I'm not opposed to that. It's a lot
If I-
easier for
If
contractors
I
and
could,
work
to
week
answer
stuff.
Ms. Polanski's question, the General Law Village Act, it's specifically 62.13, says a vacancy occurring in the office of president, trustee, or any other elective office, so that would be clerk or treasurer, shall be filled by appointment by the council, and the appointee shall hold office until the next regular village election. And so in that scenario, you have 4-year terms. You can reduce them. The council, you've done that by ordinance. You can reduce them to 2-year terms. But under current circumstances, if nobody ran, the council would appoint, and that person would fill that office, clerk or treasurer, for the 4 years until the next election.
Until the whole next election,
Yes.
or until the next available?
It says, shall hold office until the next regular village election. So it would be a minimum of 2 years.
So then that position would then come up for.
Yes, it would come up for election again, and
So
if
it
somebody
wouldn't-
ran, then that person would either be elected or not. If nobody did, then you would appoint again.
So then there's a stagger.
Well, no, it would go to 2, and then it would fall back to the 4. The
Yes.
next, it would go to 2 years. No, it would go to 2. It would go to the next election for that office.
No, if you appoint, it's to the next regular election, and you have elections every 2 years.
2 years. But then if that's not the regular term of that office, then that would go, next election would go to 2 years, and then it would go back to 4.
If somebody ran.
Yes. Yeah, it would ultimately find its way back to the norm. Unless we stagger. Is that an option, Mark? Can we have the next, in 2022, have 1 or 2 of these positions be a 2-year and then go to a staggered?
You can.
One time, 2 years.
You can provide that the clerk or treasurer, by ordinance, their terms can be 2 years. The reason the clerk and treasurer serve 4-year terms is because that's by ordinance of the council.
I'd like to keep it 4 years, but stagger, see if it's an option to stagger those. So one is 2022, one is 2024, but still a 4 year, so there's an overlap in those positions, not a complete vacate of the office possibility.
Well, I guess you could change the ordinance for only one of them for 2 years, and then when the 2 years comes, change that ordinance for that
Back to
position to
4 year.
4.
Yeah.
I guess.
Well, Mark's got his thinking cap on
Yeah.
certain
Well, it
possibilities.
Again,
If this
well-
doesn't happen, I think that's a better option than the current setup, where we're getting 3 new trustees, potentially a president, a clerk, and a treasurer
Right,
in
6,
one term.
a change of 6.
That's,
The statute, it's MCL 62.4, unless otherwise provided by ordinance, the president, clerk, and treasurer hold their respective offices for the term of 2 years and until the successors are elected and qualified. So you could change the terms to, for the clerk and treasurer to 2 years if you choose.
and then back to 4.
Well, yes.
You can change it.
I would recommend you not do the jumping bean thing, but I mean, you can do that.
I would just encourage you all to do a little more Google research. I mean, unless the position is, like Megan, I think I got it right, that your concern really is just taking away that right to vote from the residents.
That is a portion of it.
That's your major concern? Okay, and I certainly appreciate that. Do you have others that you want to share, or just that, I'm just trying to understand a little bit better?
Yeah, that's what we've been discussing.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of empirical studies out there. I researched 3 of them, I read them. There's one from 2012 by a CHS Lim. There's another from 2018 by Mr. Hassami. If you Google that, there's significant evidence that show cost saving, higher levels of service that result from appointing the service level versus the election level. They go on further to report that elected public officials choose different policies than appointed officials, due mostly in part to the removal of the political incentives. So again, there's a lot of research and data that supports why municipalities do this move.
And wouldn't that be great if we could do that all the way to the top? But our government is built this way, all the way from the top.
Yeah, I mean, well, they have some statutes so they can change senators and whatnot. If you look at judgeships, right, some of these studies refer to judges in particular versus, clerk and these sorts of appointed officials. But the same data and the same documentation, the same analysis is made from making an official someone who holds public office by the electoral process versus someone who's appointed as an ex officio, who's hired to serve the elected body and the community, to bring local government the benefits of their education, their training, their experiencing in administrating local government operations and management.
Well, and I'm hearing that, granted, I see it as a bigger concern than you do, taking the power away from the people. But I would argue that however many years ago, how old is the general law village, they thought it was a very big deal. Otherwise, they wanted to put this referendum in there for a petition for the people. So taking the power away from a people is a big deal. Even if that was my only concern, that's a very good, big concern.
No, and I share that concern. It is a big deal, and it is a concern of mine, very much. I'm weighing against my first line, front line experience. I'm in that office every day. I hear the residents' concerns, right? I'm addressing their needs. I'm trying to figure out a way to best service them moving forward and the staff. That's why I bring it forward for discussion. Again, I'm only one vote on this board, right? We all know that it's going to take a 2/3 majority to make this happen. And if there isn't an appetite for it, then there isn't an appetite for it. But I thought it was at least worth discussing because it's that important for the level of service that I feel our residents deserve, that we move forward in a manner that best fills that bill.
Absolutely, and I think anyone wants to discuss anything, I think we are open to discussing it.
Okay, so is there, moving on, because I know we're at 9:25, is there any desire to hold a public hearing at next month's meeting to get more public input? Or do you just want to?
I think the more input you can get, the better off you're gonna be.
Yeah.
Whether it's one way or the other.
Yeah, you should allow the residents to voice
So
their opinion.
yes, I would recommend doing it.
Okay.
I chuckle and I apologize because Megan has brought that up so many times in the past, and you guys have sat up here and said, no, it's our decision to make,
And we
and
want to
that's
hear
what
what
they
the
voted
people
for
have
us
to
for.
say.
So it's funny
but then we
just to
don't
hear
want
it back.
we
I
don't
just had to
want them
chuckle
to
a little
elect
bit.
people.
Well,
I mean,
no,
just
because
hypocrisy.
You're elected to represent them.
Yeah.
Yes.
the process itself of making that change requires a public hearing. So there's difference between a
Yes.
requirement to fulfill that, which is why I say we would hold a public hearing
Correct.
to get the input
I can
versus.
respect that. I just the way it came out, to get more
Okay.
feedback from the residents and this and that.
No.
After it's been brought up so many times, even before I got on the board, and just to hear that, I don't know.
Well, it's required, so.
Okay, so are you making that motion, Matt?
Yes.
Okay.
Support.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Three opposed to holding a public hearing. Okay. All right, last item under new business are our budget,
Yeah, I talked to Christine about it, yeah.
our budget amendments.
Great.
You
She's
have
able
in
to
your,
help you, and then when I've tried to add agenda items, she tells me it's not her job to facilitate anything.
Sorry.
Yeah.
so the recommendation is to approve the fourth quarter budget amendments as submitted by Romeo accountant Tim Sedlowski, who obviously is here and has spoken on that. You have the document that he drafted with the cover letter, said that he has prepared the fiscal year 2021-22 budget amendments, number one by department through December 31st of 2021, containing adjustments to actual operations. The amendment contained primarily adjustments for property tax revenues collected and sent delinquent to Macomb County. We're accounting for increased compensation expenses for village employees, the elimination of contingency, purchase of property, professional services for engineering and computers, tree removing and trimming, local community stabilization revenue recognition in the cemetery fund, and increased building department revenues and expenditures. Does anybody have any questions for Tim regarding these budget amendments?
Yeah, so one of the things you say is being adjusted is the salaries. So, I'm just, that wasn't budget, none of that was budgeted, the salary increases?
So there was a contingency line item that was budgeted, so that was removed and allocated to where the wages were adjusted, and then taxes, Social Security, Medicare, deferred compensation, all that goes up when wages go up. So the contingency line was removed and reallocated to all those areas, and then I used some of the contingency to balance the budget for the property that was purchased. So all the contingency that was budgeted was removed and reallocated so that the village still has a surplus, a small surplus of several thousand, of $3,000 in the general fund. So that's basically what happened.
Any other questions? Otherwise, anybody want to make a motion to approve the budget amendments?
Make a motion to approve the budget amendment as presented.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion by Bartholomew. Roll call, please.
Bartholomew?
Yes.
Edwards?
Yes.
Park?
Yes.
Mozart?
Yes.
Wozzinansky?
No.
Fowler?
No.
Parker?
No.
Motion carries 4-3.
I know I asked this last month, and was met with it, that you, does anybody want to quantify why you're voting no on the budget amendments as a procedural matter? I'm not sure what you're opposed to. Tim's accounting procedures, or?
Here's the thing, when you ask us to qualify, it is seen as voting intimidation. Because you didn't ask the yes people to qualify. You didn't ask us to qualify at any other time on any of the other votes. So when you only pick specifically something that maybe you don't agree with and ask for a qualification at that point, it is seen as voter intimidation. And that's why I say I don't want to answer it.
Especially when you ask during the roll of the vote, when there's still people left to vote, and you're gonna ask someone to qualify, that's what we just had discussion.
She waited until it was all done.
That's plenty times been done before.
And the thing that's been, we've gone to budget workshops, we've gone through, we think we all agree on a budget, and then you guys vote against a budget, and we don't know, like, there might have been something, if you didn't like it, we could have changed something, but we don't know. It's
Right.
just,
I'm
is it
just trying to
protest?
understand.
We must have sitting in different meetings completely. There's just been plenty of times that
Motion to adjourn?
we've disagreed with stuff that you've talked about, and then all of a sudden, just because the board voted doesn't mean it's gonna change my opinion.
We did a workshop though, and we were all deciding what we were.
When I ask the question, I'm really just trying to understand what the opposition is, because the purpose of debate is to hear a pro and a con, right? To understand
Yes, but we
where
will-
your concern was, and if
Time
you
and
don't want to
place.
answer that, that's okay. I'm just giving you the opportunity so that the residents who say, why, did they vote no because they didn't?
The residents have no problem coming to us and asking us questions. If anybody wants to know why I vote the way I vote, come ask.
Did you wanna qualify why you voted
But we're on
yes?
camera right now, you can get more people. You can reach
You wanna take that time so they know why you voted yes?
Because we need to do that.
You are a resident.
Because I explained my yes vote in the reason.
If you have a question for me, Kevin,
That's okay.
ask.
So we had a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. Good motion. Meeting closed. Thank you.